Chapter 430. Xiao Zhangping's eyes wavered and she fell into a moment of panic. She raised her hand and gently tucked her hair behind her ear. She pretended to be relaxed and raised the corner of her mouth. Well, it sounds like it's not that I didn't work hard, but he shouldn't belong to me. I can't blame myself. Hui Mo looked back and saw that Xiao Zhangping's face was wet. He didn't know when she started crying. 13th Princess, why are you crying? He had goosebumps all over his body. He ran over to take out his handkerchief. After a long time, he remembered that he had already given her his handkerchief to wipe her tears. Was she made of water? Why are there so many tears? Girls are really troublesome. Xiao Zhangping stubbornly turned her face away. Who's crying? I'm not crying. It's obvious that the wound is too painful. Hui Mo silently looked at the knife in his hand that hadn't been used yet. His mind. Xiao Zhangping glared at him and said arrogantly, "What are you looking at? I said it's painful, it's painful. When I see this knife, I know that it must be very painful to cut the arm." Hui Mo said in his heart, "Okay, if you say it's painful, then it's painful. You're the princess, you have the final say." Shi Yang was right. Beautiful women are all tigers. They are either fierce, bad, or unreasonable. It's really a headache. Hearing Xiao Zhangping's sobbing, Hui Mo silently handed his sleeve to her. Xiao Zhangping pulled it and wiped her face. Then she sniffed a few times and gradually stopped crying. She said, "But I won't give them my blessing." "Never." Hui Mo, okay. Anyway, my Shizzy doesn't care whether you give them your blessing or not. Xiao Zhangping, if they get married in the future, I won't give them a single copper coin as a wedding gift. Hui Mo, no problem. Our Nanping prince's mansion is a tyrant. We don't lack money. Humph. Xiao Zhangping, I won't give up. As long as there's a chance, I'll try my best to take Shizzy back from Ningxu. Hui Mo, I'll wave the flag for Her Royal Highness. Don't worry, even if the flag is broken, my Shizzy won't go back. Xiao Zhangping frowned. What's the smell on your sleeve? Why is it so smelly? Hui Mo pulled back his sleeve and remembered that the cow was very fierce when he was taking the milk. It kept moving around and he had to exert a lot of effort to control it. He was afraid that his sleeve had rubbed against the cow at that time. Xiao Zhangping frowned. How dare you? Ningxu and Shi Yang come back with silver beard grass. They see Hui Mo squatting on the side with his head swollen. Xiao Zhangping dislikes him so much. One is soft and cheerful while the other is unruly and sensitive. The interaction between them is interesting. She raises her eyebrows and smiles. As soon as Hui Mo saw them, he burst into tears as if he had seen his family. You're finally back. If this went on, he would most likely die at an untimely age. Hui Mo finally dared to get up from the ground, took the medicine, and went back to the topic. The cowpox has been planted. This silver beard grass can make the princess's disease spread faster, but it's the first time I've tried it, so I can't tell the exact extent. At that time, Her Royal Highness needs to act according to the situation and pay more attention. You must not ruin this show. Xiao Zhangping's face was full of worry again. She looked at Ningxu for help. But there will be a lot of people coming to check me. Not only the people from Southern Yang will come, but my father will also send people from the Imperial Hospital. With so many eyes, I'm afraid I will be exposed. Moreover, many palace guards know that I will go out of the palace tonight, especially my father. He is so deep and sharp. As long as he looks at me, I will probably be speechless. Ningxu, you must help me. Ningxu thought for a moment, then went forward to pat the back of her hand comfortingly. All right. Tomorrow morning I will use the excuse of greeting the princess to enter the palace to accompany the princess and assist from the side. Xiao Zhangping looked behind her. Where is Shizzy? Why didn't he come back with you? Ningxu curved her eyes and winked mysteriously. His Royal Highness went to find an old friend. An old friend who may be able to help the princess through this disaster. Chapter 431. In the guest house of the foreign imperial court, there was a light knock on the room where divine Dr. Duan was staying. Duan Chang Feng got up and opened the door suspiciously, only to see an ordinary-looking odd-job worker silently hand him a handwritten letter, then turned around and left. Half an hour later, in a tea house near the post house, Duan Chang Feng, under the personal guidance of the owner, walked through a winding corridor of flowers, then passed through a quiet and secluded bamboo forest, and finally saw the tea house built on the water. Outside the tea house, a clear spring was flowing, the white stones were lively, the orchids by the water were lush, and one or two short pine trees were planted here and there. It really was a picture drawn on paper, the meaning of the immortal poet's pen. The tea house was surrounded by water, and there was only one bamboo path leading to it. Inside the open door and window, a thin and straight figure was sitting under the window, carefully sipping tea. Looking at his graceful bearing, he was even more graceful than before. "Ha ha ha, Your Highness Crown Prince, long time no see." Seeing an old friend, Duan Chang Feng immediately walked in, but when he looked to the side and saw the black cloth in front of his eyes, he couldn't help but sigh. "After we parted at the border, we haven't seen each other for 3 years. I didn't expect Your Highness Crown Prince to have changed so much. It's exactly as Lord Xian said, how many autumns have passed." Hearing the voice of an old friend, Xiahou Qing extended his arms in invitation. The two sat opposite each other and personally poured a cup of tea for Duan Chang Feng. Xiahou Qing smiled. "I also didn't expect that in just a few years, Mr. would change and become the divine doctor of Southern Yang. If it weren't for my subordinates accidentally investigating Mr., I wouldn't have known that this divine doctor was you." Duan Chang Feng took a sip of the tea and put it down. He looked at the frost on his temples, the wrinkles on his face, and his eyes, which had become cloudy and old because of the passage of time. He could not help but sigh and say, "The fate of a man is so unpredictable, and no one can predict it." When my junior sister and I left our sect and entered Jianghu for the first time, we were full of hot-bloodedness. Who would have thought that we would encounter such a thing later on, leaving our true love, friends dead, and our sect dead? We were like wild dogs, deserted by everyone. If it weren't for the fact that I was lucky enough to receive your help, I'm afraid that my bones would have been blown to dust by the sandstorm at the border. Afterwards, when the war was over, I looked around and found that I had nowhere to go. By a freak combination of factors, I saved the wife of a wealthy merchant from the Southern Yang Kingdom. With their help, I entered the Imperial Hospital of the Southern Yang Kingdom step by step. I still remember the heroic bearing of Your Highness in the Battle of White Wolf Mountain when you shot 5 enemy bandits with a single arrow. Indeed, heroes come from the young. Xiahou Qing's voice was low and deep. I also do not dare to forget that I was ambushed at the foot of the White Wolf Mountain and was hit by several arrows. If Mr. did not come to my rescue, it would have been difficult for me to escape death. I still remember what Master said when he discovered my illness, and it is those words that have kept me going till now. "Sir, let me toast you with tea instead of wine." Duan Chang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and refused. "Ah, that's because Your Highness saved me first, and I wanted to repay your kindness later. It's only natural, and I'm ashamed to accept it. What's more, those words did not come from me, but were spoken to me by my best friend before he died. He said, when a man walks the world, he does not rely on his legs, but on his inextinguishable faith. As long as I still have a breath, nothing can stop me. People take my eyes, break my limbs, and cut my blood, but my heart still burns. Today, I will bravely face death without fear, because I have a clear conscience. He is really a foolish person. But this person is also so cute that I miss him every day." Chapter 432. Duan Chang Feng's weathered eyes were filled with deep nostalgia. He lowered his head and shook it. "Let's not talk about that. Your Highness didn't come late at night just to catch up with me. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. I'll do my best." Xiahou Qing was not pretentious. "I know that you are of noble character, so I will not beat around the bush with you. Tomorrow, the Southern Yang vice-emissary will most likely invite you to the palace to verify something. When the time comes, I would like to ask for your assistance." Duan Chang Feng laughed heartily. "It's just a small matter. The Crown Prince and I are friends who have gone through life and death together. There's no need to be so courteous. It'll make us seem distant." Xiahou Qing also laughed. "I'm treating you like an outsider. I'll use tea in place of wine to punish myself by drinking 3 cups. Good, Good, good. I'll drink with your highness. After a few cups of tea, the two exchanged their experiences in the past few years and talked happily. It was already the second half of the night. In order to prevent other Southern Yang envoys from finding out, Duan Chang Feng left first. Xiahou Qing stood up to send him off and said, "Mister, why did you come to the capital incognito?" Duan Chang Feng looked at the gurgling water outside the window and the reflection of the moon in the water. He suddenly smiled, and some kind of deep thought floated in his eyes. "I'm a person with half my body buried in the earth. What can I do? I haven't returned for many years and miss my hometown, so I took the opportunity to come back and see it. After seeing it, I'll leave forever." "Who are you? Get out of my way." In front of the gate of Divine Marshal, about 100 feet away, the sleeping Xuanwu Street was awakened by a delicate voice. Xiao Zhongping lifted the curtain and looked at the person in the middle of the road. She couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart. This person was wearing a black cloak, and even a strand of hair was hidden in the darkness. He stood quietly in the middle of the street and looked at her. She couldn't see anything except for the pair of bright eyes under the cloak, which made her feel numb all over. Not long after she separated from Ning Shu, her personal maid Hong Fei noticed that someone had been following them. She looked back several times and didn't see anyone. She thought Hong Fei was being paranoid. She didn't expect this person to really exist. And he only showed up when they reached the gate of Divine Marshal. What did this mean? This person was not afraid of being discovered by the Imperial Guards who were 100 zhong away. Xiao Zhongping glared at her and scolded again. "Didn't you hear what this princess said? It's late at night. This princess doesn't want to be entangled with you. If you know what's good for you, then quickly scram." The person under the cloak laughed. Her voice was soft and hoarse, but there was a hint of tenacity. It was a woman. She lowered her voice and said slowly, "There are some things that can only be said in the dead of night. Your Highness, please calm down. I have a deal that I think you will be very interested in." Xiao Zhongping glared and said, "No matter what the deal is, this princess is not interested. This princess will give you one last chance. The palace gate is right in front of you. As long as this princess gives the order, the Imperial Guards will immediately rush over to surround you and sentence you to death. You're not leaving? Hong Fei, go and call for help." Hong Fei got the order and immediately jumped out of the carriage to call for people. She heard the woman suddenly raise her voice and said, "Slow down." Dark clouds covered half of the moon. Under the slightly dim moonlight, the woman walked towards Xiao Zhongping step by step. She slowly lifted her cloak and exposed her face under the moonlight. She also exposed her face in front of Xiao Zhongping. "Princess, don't you want to know who I am? Then I will lift this cloak. I don't know if Princess dares to look." When she saw the woman's face, Xiao Zhongping was shocked and took a deep breath. The dagger that she had been secretly holding in her hand to defend herself fell to the ground. "Why, is it you?" Chapter 433. "Miss, this way, come in, come in." Hearing Ning Shu's signal, Forsythia, who had been guarding near the small door, quickly pulled the bolt and opened a gap. She poked her head out and waved at Ning Shu. Ning Shu slid into the door like a loach and whispered, "Where are father and mother?" Forsythia cleverly said, "Don't worry, master and madam have already fallen asleep. This servant has been keeping an eye on them for you." Ning Shu praised, "That's good, my good Forsythia, it's been hard on you. Tomorrow, I will definitely find a handsome and elegant husband for you." Forsythia drooped her head and pitifully said, "My good miss, how can you still be in the mood to tease this servant? Is it possible for this servant to discuss something with you? Please don't leave as soon as you say. This servant is not smart. These past 2 days, in order to fool you, my hair is almost falling out. Previously, there was an excuse to investigate the case. The day before yesterday, you left without saying goodbye and didn't return all night. Today, you finally came back, but the sky was dark and you went out again. You also know that this servant is sharp. This servant's flowery words are not enough. Being swept by this servant's eyes, this servant's courage was scared to death." Ning Shu put her hands together and opened her pair of wet eyes. Okay, I promise you, there won't be a next time, okay? Good Forsythia, please forgive me. Good, there won't be a next time. Ning Shu and Forsythia tiptoed through the stone path in the middle of the garden. Just as they were about to enter the flower corridor connected to their courtyard, they were caught red-handed. Princess Hixin clenched her handkerchief and clasped her hands in front of her. She had an appearance of questioning. Then tell me, what have you been doing these past 2 days? Don't try to coax me by saying that you missed Master Hui Ci, so you rushed to visit her. Your mother, don't look like a fool. Ning Shu smiled guiltily. He, I just went to get a relic of my master. The wind is cold at night. Mother, your health is not good. If you stand for a long time, I'm afraid you will catch a cold. Shu will immediately help you go back to rest. If you have something to say, it's not too late. As a mother, how could Hixin not see through her little tricks? She continued with a straight face. Don't worry, it's already summer, I won't be cold anymore. But my good daughter, as soon as she came back, she went to sleep, and when she woke up, she went out to run around. Anyway, I can't even catch a shadow of her. If I don't wait for you here, as a mother, where can I find you? Hixin was like a soft knife, quickly and accurately stabbing Ning Shu's little heart. She wanted to be thick-skinned and laugh, but after thinking about it, it was better to confess, Mother, I'm wrong. A child's soft words were always the best weapon to deal with a mother. Hixin's belly was full of anger, but in the end, it turned into a helpless Ari. You, are you? She waved her hand and took Ning Shu into her arms. She gently stroked her satin-like hair, just like when she was a child, she softly coaxed her to sleep. Since childhood, we know that you are smart and witty, and your mind is far more active than ordinary people. Even the young masters of the various manors in the capital are not better than you. This is a good thing, but also a bad thing. I cannot pursue today's matter, but you must promise me that in the future, you will not have anything to do with that Xiahou Qing. Ning Shu's palms clenched, and the arms that were supporting Hixin slowly bent her knees. She was guilty but firm. Mother, daughter can promise you anything else, but this, daughter can't do anything. The pain of 7 lives of reincarnation, she struggled and fell into the endless abyss every day. The wind around her was like a knife, repeatedly cutting her into pieces. Every day, she secretly hoped that someone would pass by, see her suffering, generously reach out and help her, even if it was just one person. But for a whole 300 years, she did not see anyone, until this life. This person was the only one who wanted to kill her a few times, but every time, he let go of the hand that was strangling her neck. Obviously, he looked cold and indifferent, but he repeatedly reached out to help her when she was about to be in trouble. She fell into Xuerant's trap, and when she fell into the underground palace, she almost thought that it was over, and she did not live a good life. She had already made a gesture of farewell, but she did not expect that he would also come down. She was clearly a sickly person who did not know how many days she had left after being poisoned. No matter how much she tried to be brave, she could not be compared to him. But he jumped down, and used the black brocade that he never left to tie around her waist, and held her in his hands. In that moment of shock, her throat was choked, and she silently thought in her heart, maybe it's this person. You held me, I will not let you go in this life. Later on, under a coincidence, she found out his true identity. She thought that he was her lucky chance in this life, but she did not expect that he was a red bean that was planted 300 years ago. So, what reason did she have to let go? Chapter 434. Looking at her daughter kneeling in front of her, who was as beautiful as a magnolia flowerbud, Hixin's heart ached. She said in a trembling voice, You have been a filial child since you were a child. You have never disobeyed me. You have made up your mind on this matter, haven't you? Ning Shu couldn't bear it, but she had to insist, Mother, please forgive me. Hixin said involuntarily, Do you know that you will die if you are with him? Ning Shu suddenly frowned and looked up. Mother, do you know something about Xiahou Qing? Why do you say such things again and again to prevent me from being close to him? The same goes for the engagement with Tan Shaoqing. In the past, you would discuss with me before making a decision. Only this time, you are so arbitrary. It is as if you are eager to put me into the wedding sedan and get rid of Xiahou Qing from then on. I don't think it's just his illness. What do you know that you've been keeping a secret from me? Knowing that she had said something wrong, Xin's face flashed a moment of panic. She looked away and said, I don't know anything. It's just that Xiahou Shi's identity is extraordinary. The position of Nanping Mansion in the court has always been hidden. His Majesty is afraid of it. If you marry into Nanping Mansion, I will worry about it every day. That's why I said that. Ning Shu was suspicious. Is that all? Xin sighed and helped her up. What else can it be? Your mother doesn't leave the house all day long, and I don't know what's going on outside. How could I know the secrets in your head that you're imagining? I also heard the maids talk in private that Xiahou Shizi is quite popular with women. In Yunyang province, many infatuated women have committed suicide for him. The 13th princess in the palace also favors him. Handsome men always make women cry. I am afraid that you will be hurt one day. After thinking for a long time, Ning Shu still couldn't figure out the reason. She smiled and said, Mother, you're worrying too much. I choose someone because I think he's worth it. If one day I find out that I've misjudged someone and that person isn't worthy of my devotion, then I'll immediately withdraw my feelings. Your daughter is very clever and definitely won't make a losing deal. What's more, my mother had to walk through the gates of hell to give me life. I treasure her a lot. Xin was amused by her deliberately winking and playing tricks. She helplessly patted her hand. You little mouth, anyway, I can't talk to you. In any case, you have to take Mother's words to heart and think about it carefully. It's already the Cho hour. Mother will accompany you to rest. Mother, will you accompany me? That's right. Ever since Jia was born, I've been busy taking care of him and often neglected you. It's been a long time since we've talked about intimate things. It's also been a long time since your mother hugged you to sleep like when you were young. Mother still remembers that you were soft and small when you were born. It seems like it's only been a blink of an eye. How did you grow so big? Xin held her face and her eyes were slightly wet. Ning Shu acted like a spoiled child and rubbed her face against her palm. She softly said, Mother, rest assured. No matter how big Shua grows, I will always be the little girl who relies on you and loves you. Ning Shu intimately held Xin's hand and the mother and daughter went into the room to rest. That night, Ning Shu tightly held her mother's hand as she slept. Under the weak candlelight, Xin touched her hair and stroked her back. She didn't sleep for a long time. She looked at Ning Shu's sleeping face for a long time. Her eyes seemed to be a little wet. She reluctantly bowed her head and let her lips print on her forehead. My baby, you must be good in the future. Chapter 435. After a short 4 hours of sleep, Ning Shu opened her eyes as soon as the sky brightened. She looked at the empty space beside her, but there was still some warmth left, as well as the gentle and pleasant smell of her mother. Just like when she was a child, she buried her head in her mother's blanket and sniffed carefully. As long as she was by her mother's side, she would always be happy to be a child who never grew up. However, Ning Shu recalled her mother's evasiveness when she spoke last night. She felt that there was more to her mother's words, that there were still many things she hadn't said. She had a feeling that it had something to do with Xiahou Qing. It might even have something to do with the destruction of her Ning family in her previous life. However, her mother insisted on not saying anything. She didn't even want to reveal the slightest detail. What kind of secret was it that made her so fearful and secretive? He had to think of a way to deal with it. While she was deep in thought, the door creaked open. Forsythia came in with a basin of water. Miss, you're awake. Ning Shu lazily waved her hand at Forsythia. Good Forsythia, come and give me a massage. Forsythia obediently put down the basin like a little wife and sat by the bed to massage her shoulders. Miss, do you have something important to do today? Ning Shu lifted the blanket and got up. Yes, it's something very, very important. It concerns Princess Changping's happiness for the rest of her life. With the princess's impatient personality, she's probably anxious by now. We have to hurry. Oh right, when did Mother leave? About an hour ago. She specially got up to make some red bean and barley soup for you. She personally took care of the heat. When it was done, she was afraid that she would wake you up, so she went back to her room to rest. Before she left, she specifically told me to make sure you drink this soup. I'll bring it over right now. Ning Shu smiled. Good, good, good. Mother personally made it. Not to mention red bean and barley soup, even if it was poison, I would drink it without leaving a drop behind. After drinking the soup and freshening up, Ning Shu rushed to the palace to have an audience. Ning Shu, you're finally here. Why are you so slow? Do you know that I was so nervous that I couldn't sleep the whole night? I was so anxious waiting. In the end, she was still a little girl who had never experienced anything. Even when she was angry, she still looked cute. As soon as he saw Ning Shu, Xiao Zhongping came forward to greet her. Her face was covered with a veil, and the heavy bruises under her eyes revealed her night of tossing and turning. Ning Shu had taken the pills prepared by Huemore in advance, and she was not as contagious as smallpox. Therefore, she was not afraid of her. Your Highness, calm down. I will go to the palace at noon to have a state banquet with His Majesty. After that, I will ask you to come back with me. Before that, please don't be impatient. By the way, how is His Highness's cowpox? After being comforted by Ning Shu, Xiao Zhongping's uneasy mood calmed down a little. She glanced around and ordered Hongfei to go outside to guard. Only then did she dare to remove her veil and reveal her arms. Ning Shu nodded her head. Huemore's craftsmanship is really good. Looking with the naked eye, these blisters are not much different from smallpox. Anyway, ordinary people like me can't tell. The rouge on your forehead needs to be swept a little more to make the illusion that you are feverish. Xiao Zhongping sat in front of the dressing table. Ning Shu bent down and carefully applied a layer of rouge on her forehead. Looking at Ning Shu's serious face and eyes, Xiao Zhongping unconsciously dug her nails into her palm. She said with uncertainty, Ning Shu, do you really think that we can deceive father and the others? Chapter 436. As the saying goes, one should not sit under the awning. The higher one stands, the more they care about their own life, not to mention the smallpox that can make one's complexion change. Even if they have doubts in their hearts, so what? As long as there is the slightest possibility of the smallpox being transmitted back to Southern Yang, to their Majesty and princes, none of them will dare to take such a huge risk and bear such a huge responsibility. Moreover, it doesn't matter to Southern Yang who they marry. They just want a marriage that can control Great Yu. As long as the princess is fearless in the face of danger, I believe it will work. Moreover, I will dress up as a palace maid and accompany the princess. Listening to her calm voice, Xiao Zhongping nodded with conviction. Ian, what you said is very reasonable. I shouldn't be afraid. The more nervous I am, the easier it is to reveal a flaw. Ning Shu praised, Your Highness is right. Xiao Zhongping's face reddened and angrily said, Are you coaxing me like a child? How old do you think I am? You are offending your superiors. Ah, she found out. However, Ning Shu already knew her temper like the back of her hand, so she wasn't afraid at all. She continued to coax her in the same tone, Yes, yes, yes. My daughter offended her superior and offended the princess. Your Highness is a great person, so please forgive me. You. Xiao Zhongping was so angry that her face reddened even more. She angrily gritted her teeth and glared at her. You are so annoying and sharp-tongued. I don't know what Xiahou Shizi sees in you. Other than your face being a little better, there is nothing attractive about you. The princess is right. He can't see anything, so it's not that he likes me. It's that I swindled him and used all my tricks to trick him. Xiao Zhongping was furious, treacherous and cunning. Ning Shu said, Who said it isn't? Unfortunately, Xiahou Shizi likes this advantage of mine the most. Xiao Zhongping bickered for a long time. She was so angry that she was dizzy and forgot about her nervousness. She was silent for a while. After a while, she said, Thank you, Ning Shu. Thank you for being willing to accompany me. Ning Shu curved her glass-like eyes. The sunlight penetrated through the window lattice, casting a fragmented light in her eyes. It's Ning Shu's honor to be able to serve the princess. Is that so? Xiao Zhongping whispered. Ning Shu keenly captured the change in her tone. She raised her head, but before she could ask, "What's wrong with the princess?" Xiao Zhongping suddenly raised his hand and pierced the thin needle hidden between his fingers into Ning Shu's neck. Ning Shu widened her eyes and subconsciously dodged and counterattacked, but an inexplicable numbness instantly swept through her limbs and bones, sucking away all the strength in her body, causing her to slowly collapse. The feeling of being betrayed made her throat itch, but more than that, she felt endless disappointment and anger from the bottom of her heart. Zhongping, princess, why? She had always regarded Xiao Zhongping as a lonely child with a bitter fate. Although she occasionally acted rudely and mischievously, her heart was still clear and pure, so she had never been too wary of her. But she never thought that it would be the farmer and the snake again. Ning Shu, in the end, you're blind again. Every word came from the depths of her soul. It was like a whip that fiercely lashed Xiao Zhongping's body, causing her eyes to turn red and her face to be filled with endless guilt. She kept shaking her head, not daring to look at her questioning eyes. Ning Shu, don't look at me like that, please. Hong Fei heard her voice and immediately came in. Princess, calm down. This servant will help you carry Lady Ning to the bed. Ah, okay. Xiao Zhongping didn't dare to look at her from beginning to end until the two of them worked together to carry Ning Shu to the bed. Before Ning Shu fainted, the last thing she heard was Xiao Zhongping kneeling in front of the bed, sobbing in shame. Ning Shu, I'm sorry. I'm also sorry. There's no other way. When you know the truth in the future, you'll forgive me. Ning Shu, I'm sorry. Chapter 437. The spring river is connected to the sea, and the bright moon on the sea rises with the tide. Rippling with the waves for thousands of miles, where is the spring river without the moon? The river flows around the fragrant meadow, and the moonlight illuminates the flower forest. Frost flies in the air, and the white sand on the shore cannot be seen. At the banquet in Weiyang Palace, everyone toasted each other and was in harmony. His Majesty and Empress Cao were present, and all the princes and civil and military officials were present. Xiahou Qing represented the South pacifying Wang estate, so he could not be absent. His Majesty originally wanted Xiahou Qing to sit on the first seat on his left to show that he valued him, but Xiahou Qing refused with the excuse that he was tired and liked peace. Even so, he still received a roll of the eyes from the fourth prince, Xiao Yunsu. Fortunately, Xiahou Qing did not take him seriously at all. After experiencing consort Qi's madness and falling out of favor, Xiao Yunsu's temperament was more sinister than before, and his pair of phoenix eyes were faintly evil. He watched from the sidelines as the emperor favored Xiahou Qing in every possible way. He raised his head and downed a mouthful of wine. He made a strange sound. Xiahou Shizi is indeed extraordinarily charming. As soon as he saw you, Fu Huang's brows relaxed. I should be glad that you were not born in the Xiao family. Otherwise, we brothers would not even have the chance to hope for the position of crown prince. Sixth brother, seventh brother, don't you think so? Xiao Yunsu's ridicule was particularly ear-piercing in this harmonious atmosphere. Ju Sai could not help but frown, but Xiahou Qing was still indifferent. He continued to sit upright and drink wine, turning a deaf ear. But the more he acted like this, the angrier Xiao Yunsu became. Xiahou Shizi is really calm. It's just that some people have wild ambitions, but don't have the body to match them. The heavens really have opened their eyes. Ju Sai immediately said, Your Highness, please pay attention to your word. Who do you think you are? How dare you bark in front of this prince? Who gave you the guts? What, do all the servants of the South pacifying Wang estate want to ride on the heads of the imperial princes to show off? What big ambitions? Do you want to bring disaster to the country or start a rebellion? Seeing that a huge accusation was about to fall on the heads of the Nanping mansion, his intention couldn't be more obvious. He wanted to kill the Nanping mansion and Xiahou Qing. The situation immediately became tense, and even His Majesty cast a sharp gaze in their direction. Xiahou Qing put down the wine cup in his hand. His face was still calm, but his body faintly emitted a trace of murderous aura. Hui Mo angrily pressed down on his sword and wanted to argue with him. However, he was stopped by Xiao Qing. Xiao Yuni glanced at him and did not say a word, making it clear that he was going to be a bystander. Xiao Yunsen lived up to his reputation as the Prince of Six Orifices. He had a deep friendship with Xiao Qing, and Ningxu's Xiao Qing had done him a great favor in the case of the envoy. Therefore, he raised his wine cup and said with a big smile, "Fourth brother, what are you doing? Originally, it was just a joke between brothers. Why did it become so serious? Come, let's drink. I'll say this first, I have no intention of becoming the crown prince. Father knows very well how much weight I have in my stomach. I've already thought about it. In the future, it doesn't matter who inherits the throne. You just have to give me the title of an idle prince, just like little uncle. All I do is eat, drink, play, listen to music, and pick up courtesans. I'm as free as a god. Even if the Jade Emperor gives me the title of heavenly official, I won't do it. Even Xiao Prince thinks the same, right? Pa." A fan hit the back of his head. Xiao Yunsen cried out and held his head in pain. "Little uncle, what are you doing?" Xiao Minglan walked out from behind him with a cold smile. "Just because you're ignorant and incompetent, do you think Xiao Prince is as unambitious as you? Eat, drink, play, listen to music, and pick up courtesans. In your eyes, your little uncle is just an idle, ignorant, and incompetent playboy of the royal family, right?" Xiao Yunsen muttered, "What's wrong with being a playboy? Playboys are good, playboys are good, playboys are wonderful, playboys are happy. Hey, spare me, little uncle. I'm wrong. In my eyes, little uncle is wise and mighty, tall and dignified. Your nephews will look up to you and imperial father to forge ahead." Xiao Minglan looked at his cowardly flattery. She kept her fan and smiled lazily. She flicked the hem of her robe and sat down casually. She looked at Xiao Yunsu from the corner of her eyes. Since ancient times, the crown prince's position has been based on the first wife's position. Those who are ambitious will have to rely on their own abilities. I've never seen such a joke in the history books. Xiao Sai, what do you think? Besides, today's banquet is to send off the southern Yang envoys. If you embarrass the other countries with a quarrel, that would be a real joke. After being slapped in the face, Xiao Yunsen's expression turned ugly. He smiled maliciously. "Little uncle is right. We'll see who will win in the end. When the time comes, the winner takes all. I'd like to see who will kneel at whose feet." A storm was suppressed by Xiao Minglan. Xiao Qing nodded slightly. "Thank you, Prince Ku, for helping me out." Xiao Minglan yawned and waved her hand. "Hey, you don't have to be so polite with me. I haven't played mahjong for a long time. Next time, I'll drag you and the girl from the Ning family to play 300 rounds. This time, I'll definitely defeat you under the table." Xiao Minglan was winking and making faces as she spoke happily. Suddenly, a eunuch announced, "Great Elder Princess has arrived." The smile on Xiao Minglan's face froze for a moment. She yawned again and leaned lazily against the back of the chair to rest. When Great Elder Princess Xiao Mingxue walked past him, her footsteps stopped beside him for a while. Then she continued to walk towards His Majesty with a smile while tugging at her flowery clothes. This moment of strangeness was so fast that it was hard to catch. However, it didn't escape Xiao Qing's ears. His ears moved slightly. His slender fingers slowly rubbed the mouth of the jade porcelain cup, as if he was deep in thought. Chapter 438. After the eldest princess sat down, the banquet officially began. The sound of singing and dancing lingered in the air as they gracefully wrapped around the slender, white, and soft arms of the beauties. It was a scene of prosperity that was charming and extravagant, causing one to be intoxicated with a single glance. Under the cover of the music, Hui Mo angrily bent down and whispered in Xiao Qing's ear, "Shiziyi, why didn't you let me reason with the fourth prince just now? He clearly knows that today's occasion is unusual, but he still targeted our Nanping mansion and you. He is extremely vicious." Xiao Qing's fingers gently tapped along with the melody of the court musician and said casually, It is because today's occasion is unusual that we can't act rashly. He chose this day and place to make things difficult for us in order to force us to show our anger. What he wants to do is very simple. The first step is to provoke us into going against him. The second step is to continue adding fuel to the fire. The moment you draw your sword in front of His Majesty, that will be the beginning of His Majesty's suspicion and the beginning of our destruction. Hui Mo, you have always been impulsive. You have to be more careful in the future. Don't fall into such a shallow trap. Huemore was confused. His Majesty has trusted you so much recently, especially his head disease. Every time, the imperial doctors couldn't help him. Only when you came to the palace with him did His Majesty calm down a little. How could he be bewitched by his baseless words? Yes, His Majesty does favor me, but I'm afraid he favors the military power of our Nanping mansion more. The southern Yang kingdom is pressing on step by step. Although this time it was resolved by marriage, in my opinion, there will be a war between the two countries within 3 years. His Majesty is beginning to grow old. When he still has the strength, he will want to make a political achievement that will be remembered in history. However, old Prince Yu passed away, the Shui family was turned into powder, and the Song family, the Defender General of the state, also lost the direct line. At present, only our Nanping mansion still has the strength to fight. This strength is what we rely on to gain a foothold, but it may also be the fire that causes a disaster. If we lose ourselves, this war will be lost. Huemore scratched his head and said confusedly, but I don't think it's just like that. The way His Majesty looks at you is very kind and generous, just like the way His Highness looks at you. I don't think he just treats you as a subject. It seems that I'm too naive. The people in the palace are too gloomy and scary. Our Yunyang province is better. He thought about it and was still unconvinced, but we were humiliated by the fourth prince like this. How can we just let it go? Just now, he kept saying that you won't live long. I'm so angry. I'm really angry. I can't swallow this. Juicy leaned forward and poured a cup of wine for Xiaoho. He squinted at Huemore, who clenched his fists and was so angry that he looked like a pufferfish. He said slowly, "Why are you in such a hurry? Our Nanping mansion has always been a place where we won't attack unless we are attacked first. Since others have shown their dagger to us first, there is no reason for us to swallow the insult. Returning 10 times is a bit overbearing, but this subordinate feels that returning 2 times is just right. What do you think, Crown Prince?" The corners of Xiaoho Qing's lips curled up slightly, forming an arc that was not a smile. "I'll allow it. However, be careful not to go overboard." "Yes, sir." Huemore looked at Ju Sai, who said the most ruthless words with a calm expression. Thinking of the means he used to punish people in the past, he felt a chill in his heart. But thinking that he punished the fourth prince this time, he immediately felt happy and comfortable all over his body. Everything tasted good. His Majesty seemed to be in a good mood today. After exchanging greetings with Tuoba Han and others, he specially summoned Princess Royal, Xiao Mingxue. Having just experienced the sudden death of an envoy, everyone who had been tense all this while began to relax. They exchanged pleasantries, and the guests and hosts enjoyed themselves. Amidst this harmonious atmosphere, the sound of a wine cup shattering suddenly rang out, interrupting the smiles on everyone's faces. For a moment, everyone's eyes subconsciously followed the sound. Xiaoho Qing's eyebrows slightly moved. What happened? Hui Mo immediately looked up. Oh, it seems that Princess Royal accidentally broke the wine cup. It shouldn't be a big deal. Huh? What's the matter? Princess Royal's face looks bad. Let me see. He was so engrossed in watching the commotion that he did not notice that Prince Ku, Xiao Minglan, who had been resting with his eyes closed, suddenly woke up. His fingers tightened and his pair of amorous eyes were as dark as ink. Chapter 439. No one knew what was going on. The entire place fell silent and no one dared to make a sound. Above the jade steps, on the dragon throne, His Majesty supported his chin with his hand and said with a faint smile, "Mingxue, what's wrong with you? Are you dissatisfied with the marriage I bestowed? Or do you think my sons aren't good enough for your precious little princess?" Xiao Mingshua's expression froze for a moment before she continued to cover her mouth and laugh. Royal brother, what kind of joke is this? Royal brother's sons are all outstanding youths. I'm envious of any one of them. How can I be dissatisfied? Even if they aren't good enough, it's my stupid girl who isn't good enough for my imperial nephews. Ari, imperial brother, you don't know, but my Rui girl has been spoiled by me and the prince consort. She doesn't see the big picture and is full of arrogance. She throws tantrums all day long and can't even say a word. Otherwise, she'll cry non-stop. Even I blush when I say it. How could someone with such a temper be worthy of the position of imperial consort? His Majesty laughed. How is that not seeing the big picture? She's clearly naive and cute, pure and innocent. That's why she doesn't know how to hide it. I admire this kind of child the most. This kind of pure laughter is also lacking in my palace. What's more, Mingxue, I don't believe that the child you raised will be bad. Whoever marries Herue will be the one with the greatest fortune. Imperial brother, you flatter me. I'm afraid I'll have to blush on Rui girl's behalf. After some banter, Xiao Mingxue sighed and the corners of her eyes became moist. I won't hide it from Imperial brother. Actually, I wasn't willing to marry Herue just now. It's not for any other reason, but because Imperial brother knows that I only have one child. She's still young and I really can't bear to marry her off so early. Otherwise, the prince consort and I will be lonely in the future. We don't know how to live our lives. You're wrong. How can a daughter not marry? Instead of marrying an outsider and worrying about her well-being, why not marry my child? If Herue is wronged in the future, as the imperial aunt, you can scold her as much as you want. I definitely won't stop you. Zhao Bin, call the other brats over. Your Majesty summons the 4th prince, 6th prince, 7th prince, and 8th prince to have an audience with the emperor. Xiao Yunsu and the others immediately left their seats and stepped forward. Greetings to imperial father, greetings to imperial aunt. His Majesty waved his hand casually and said with a smile, Mingxue, you can choose which one to be your son-in-law. Xiao Mingxue clenched her fists tightly, but the emperor had already cut off her path of retreat. She had no other choice but to slowly get up and walk in front of Xiao Yunsu and the others. Of the 4 princes of the right age, the 8th prince, Xiao Yunjin, was the youngest. He had just turned 15 a few days ago and looked very childish, clearly still a child. Xiao Yunsen was fair-skinned, handsome, and lively. However, he had too many unreliable deeds. The word unreliable was printed on his forehead. He wasn't a good candidate either. Only Xiao Yunsu and Xiao Yuni were left. In the past, Xiao Yunsu had the advantage, but after consort Qi's fall from power and the Qi family's reputation fell, this proud 4th prince was like a pearl covered in dust and was no longer favored. On the other hand, the 6th prince, Xiao Yuni, gradually rose to prominence. Especially when he prayed for His Majesty's birthday and took the initiative to give up the Yongchengwei's power that he had obtained with great difficulty. His Majesty was greatly moved and praised him in court. Seeing Xiao Mingxue pacing back and forth in front of the 6th prince, the emperor said, It seems that Mingxue has taken a fancy to Yi Er. Zhao Bin, draft the decree. The 6th prince, Xiao Yuni, is to be married to Princess Helui. The wedding date is set to be 3 months later. During my 25th year ascension ceremony, my imperial sister and I will be even more happy and closer. Immediately, the entire palace erupted in warm congratulatory voices. The hundreds of officials beamed with joy and shouted long live. No one noticed that the eldest princess, Xiao Mingxue, who was supposed to be the happiest, had her head lowered. Her pale lips were stiffly smiling, and the wine pot that Xiao Minglan had accidentally knocked over in the corner. Chapter 440. His Majesty was overjoyed when he ordered a marriage that was destined by heaven. He bestowed the imperial wine to everyone to taste. After the eldest princess accompanied His Majesty and drank 3 cups of wine, she excused herself and went out to sober up. Not long after, Xiao Minglan stood up lazily and said, TSK, the songs and dances in the palace only have these few tricks. Compared to those outside the palace, it is very boring, very boring. This prince has no interest in watching. I'm leaving. After saying that, he also staggered out. Hui Mo's eyes turned and he was curious. He bent down and said, "Your Highness, it's interesting here. Shall we follow them and take a look?" Xiahou Qing knocked his head with the jade chopsticks and sneered, "When did you learn the habit of gossiping from Tianwen? Childish." Hui Mo groaned and said, "If you don't want to go, then don't go. Why do you have to hit me? Your Highness, you hit me too hard." Before Lady Ning was born, His Highness treated him so well. Since he had Lady Ning, his treatment had plummeted. He was no longer the little jacket in His Highness's heart. Sigh. Xiahou Qing put down the jade chopsticks and rubbed his knuckles. "We'll go." "Who said we won't go?" "But we just happened to go out to sober up." "Let's go. Be careful not to be noticed." Hui Mo watched his Shizzy get up and straighten his dark robe. He reached out his hand to Juicy and leisurely walked out of the palace. Hui Mo rubbed his aching head, cursed in his heart, and followed him silently. They were not far from the Imperial Garden and they all had internal energy. Soon, they found a rockery in the corner of the Imperial Garden and began to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Looking at Xiahou Qing's serious expression, Hui Mo thought, "Your Highness, you're not gossipy. You're not gossipy at all." Xiahou Qing seemed to have a pair of ears in his heart. He bent his knuckles and knocked on Hui Mo's forehead again. On the other side of the rockery, Xiao Minglan's lazy and smiley face had a coldness that had never been seen before. Even the mole under her eye was like the tip of a needle or the stinger of a poisonous bee. It was extremely sharp. "How could you agree to this marriage?" he scolded mercilessly. "You know very well that Herue can never marry into the royal family again. You know very well that no one can bear the consequences. You know very well that if that secret Xiao Minglan was halfway through her sentence when she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Every word she said was like a stone being thrown at her. She is your daughter. As her mother, you shouldn't watch her die." There were no ugly people in the Xiao family, and this was especially evident on this pair of siblings. Xiao Mingxue, who was standing in front of him, looked somewhat similar to Xiao Minglan. It was just that there was a hint of gentleness between her brows. She was also slightly older than him. Two graceful, shallow wrinkles appeared at the corners of her exquisitely drawn eyes. However, it could still be seen that she was once a peerless beauty. This beauty who was once a peerless beauty was now a little worried. Her brows were tightly knitted as she refuted, "You're right. I am Herue's mother. How could I harm her? You were there at the scene and saw it with your own eyes. My royal brother insisted on it. I repeatedly refused, but it ended in failure. Under such circumstances, if you were me, what would you do? Defy the imperial edict?" Xiao Minglan sneered and mocked, "So what if I defy the imperial edict? What does it have to do with me whether my royal brother is angry or not? Could it take my life because of this? You didn't refuse because you were intoxicated with power and couldn't extricate yourself. However, have you ever thought that if you can't protect the most important person, what's the use of all the wealth and glory?" Chapter 441. Xiao Mingxue's expression was extremely unsightly. Her delicately manicured nails dug deep into her palms. She shook her head and sneered, "This is the difference between you and I. I have never been able to disregard everything like you. That year, when Imperial Mother died of illness, if I had not licked my face and begged Empress Ju like a dog, do you think you would have been able to live until now? You are Prince Ku, the youngest prince since the founding of the Great Yu Empire. You are free and unfettered, and you do as you please. However, have you ever thought that this unprecedented 6-year-old prince position was obtained by your older sister by selling her soul? Otherwise, how would you have been able to do so many absurd things in these years? You even pushed away the wedding and focused on raising your actress and courtesan. What right do you have to criticize me wantonly?" After being ruthlessly stabbed, Xiao Minglan's pupils trembled. The veins on the back of his hand popped out from overexertion. Xiao Mingxue also turned her head away. Her expression was extremely unsightly. The siblings fell into a stiff silence until Xiao Mingxue heaved a long sigh and broke the silence. She raised her hand and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She lowered her voice and said, "I will think of a way to resolve this marriage. I will definitely not harm her Rue. Don't worry." Xiao Minglan laughed mockingly. He flicked his sleeves and turned around. "What do I have to worry about? That is your princess residence's matter. What does it have to do with me? I was just bored and meddled in other people's business. You can resolve it however you want. I am tired. I will go to Shattered Red Tower to find my little Hong Yang. Help me say goodbye to Imperial Brother. I will take my leave first." Looking at his resolute back, Xiao Mingxue called out, "Xiao Lan, us siblings have not spoken face to face for a long time. Other than this matter, do you have anything else to say to me?" "What is there to say? Why do I not know? Ever since I left the princess residence 15 years ago, we are only related by blood. There is nothing else." Xiahou Qing had never heard of such a heartless Xiao Minglan. Behind the rockery, Xiahou Qing, who was gently grinding the bones in his palm, continued to listen quietly. Xiao Minglan paused and said, "I was raised by you since I was young. Without you, I might not have been able to live until today. I will remember this kindness. Therefore, I must warn you, don't think about some things that you shouldn't think about. Don't reach for things that you shouldn't touch. Otherwise, you will be caught. You have been smart, so don't seek your own death." After she finished speaking, Xiao Minglan. "Xiao Lan," I said, "don't call me that." "Sister," she said. "Uncle." But Herue said, "Herto, Herue said he has not seen his uncle for you for a long time and he and said to meet to said. Ha. To said little to herself. Her too. Disgust flashed across Xiao Minglan's eyes. She sneered without turning her head, "That place is too dirty. I am not interested." Xiao Mingshua's face, which even Empress Cao had to give some face to, was now incomparably embarrassed. She leaned against the cold and hard rock of the fake mountain for a long time before hiding the dejection on her face. She put on that invincible mask again and walked out with a smile, once again returning to that extremely luxurious golden jade palace. Xiahou Qing and the others, who had accidentally overheard the entire conversation, slowly walked out from behind the rockery. Hui Mo was the first to laugh out loud. "Hey, this is the first time I have seen such a strange relationship between siblings. If you say their relationship is bad, it sounds like they have helped each other in times of need. If you say it is good, it is like they were at odds with each other." TSK. Ah. I understand now. It must be because the eldest princess has been forcing Prince Ku to go on blind dates and angered him. She is like an elder sister in a family, forcing her younger brother to do things he does not like. See, Prince Ku was driven into a corner and rebelled. Juicy glanced at him from the side. "If everyone in this world was like you, there would be less unsolved cases." Hui Mo blinked his eyes and said, "What do you mean? Are you saying that he is simple-minded?" "Your Highness, look at Juicy, look at Juicy." Xiahou Qing only says one word, "Noisy." He successfully stops Huemo's noise. Hui Mo, who was hurt twice, turned his face away sadly and cried silently for himself. Xiahou Qing suddenly remembered that Ning Shu had teased him about his outstanding way of raising children. He began to reflect on himself for the first time. It seemed that it was true. It seemed that his future children would have to be taught by her so that they would not go too far. Hui Mo was feeling sorry for himself. Suddenly, he found that His Highness seemed to have thought of something. His face inexplicably softened, like an ice spring that melted invisibly. He was extremely gentle. If those young girls outside were to see him like this, who knows how many of them would go crazy. He was just about to gossip about who His Highness was thinking of when he saw Xiahou Qing's ears move slightly. He immediately said, "Quiet, someone is coming." Hui Mo curiously looked out and was startled. "Oh, hey." Chapter 442. It was an extremely ugly face. Among all the living people that Huemore had ever seen, she was the ugliest one. Even among all kinds of dead bodies that he had examined, there were not many ugliest ones. She was dressed like an ordinary palace maid, but her face looked like it had been burned in a big fire. Her eyebrows had been burned away, and her mouth was crooked. It was as if there were ferocious worms crawling all over her face. Even her age could not be accurately determined. Only a pair of awl-like eyes swept over. In this kind of floating flower shadows and sweet fragrance of the imperial garden, suddenly seeing such a terrifying face, anyone would be so frightened that they would break out in a cold sweat. Seeing Huemo's shocked face, the palace maid immediately lowered her head. "I'm sorry for scaring you. I deserve to die." Judging from her voice, she should be an old maid, but suddenly appeared here quietly, which made people suspicious. Xiahou Qing put one hand behind his back and asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" The maid bent down in fear. "I'm from Zhao Yin's palace. I came out to find a jade pendant for my mother. If I knew that there were nobles here, I would never dare to come out and offend you." Zhao Yin. Sixth Prince Xiao Yunyi's cowardly biological mother who had no sense of existence. Xiahou Qing's eyebrows flashed with a trace of playfulness. Huemo knew what she meant and immediately stepped forward. "You said that you're from Zhao Yin's palace, right? Who knows if you're talking nonsense or not?" "I'm not talking nonsense." The maid was trembling with fear and was about to kneel down, when a lake green palace dress floated from near to far. "Shu Shui, haven't you found it yet? It's just a jade pendant. You've been here for a long time and still haven't found it. What's the use of you?" "Ah, it's Xiahou. I was blind and didn't see you. Please forgive me." It was Yin Jiaoyi. Her voice was originally slightly anxious, but when she recognized Xiahou Qing, she immediately changed her expression. She glanced at Shu Shui, who didn't even dare to raise her head, and roughly guessed the whole story. She sighed and said, "This Shu Shui is indeed mine. I was taking a walk in the imperial garden and accidentally lost a bracelet. I didn't think that she would come to find it. Later, I thought that His Majesty was holding a banquet in Weiyang Palace today. At this moment, there should be no one here, and it wouldn't scare others, so I sent her. I didn't expect that she would bump into you. It was my negligence." She was different from Empress Cao's noble and graceful, and was also completely different from Qi Feiyan's overbearing aura. Yin Jiaoyi, who was a few years younger than Empress Cao, used her whole body to write a big word worry. She was like a rootless butterfly orchid, afraid that she would fall down when the wind blew gently. Xiahou Qing's face was warm, and he also politely said, "Jiaoyi, you're too polite. It's just that I can't see, so it's not considered a collision. It's my servant who was young and reckless and lost his decorum. Hui Mo, hurry up and confess your sins." Hui Mo heard the string and quickly understood his meaning. He went forward to salute Yin Jiaoyi embarrassedly, scratched his head and said, "I pay my respects to Jiaoyi. I made a fuss about nothing and was rude. Please punish me. However, I'm really curious. What kind of disaster did this maid go through to become like this?" Yin Jiaoyi's twinkling eyes seemed to be filled with a layer of water vapor that rippled like smoke. She couldn't help but sigh. This matter started 25 years ago. That year, Empress Ju suddenly went crazy for some reason. She raised her sword and killed the previous crown prince. Blood dyed the Phoenix Algae Palace, and then she burned the entire palace. That fire was too big, spreading to palace after palace. The palace servants' howls resounded throughout the entire palace. Even after 20 years, I still can't forget those miserable cries. At that time, I hadn't been appointed as an imperial concubine by His Majesty and was still working in the Shong Palace Bureau. Because the Shong Palace Bureau I was in was very close to the Phoenix Algae Palace, I wasn't spared. At that time, my life was at stake. I saw palace maids dying one after another in front of me. I thought my life was going to end here. It was Shu Shui who braved the raging fire at a young age and dragged me out. After I was rescued, I found that my arms and back were burned, but my life was not in danger. However, because she was hit by a broken piece of wood, her entire face was destroyed and could never recover. Yin Jiaoyi's voice was slightly choked, so Shu Shui saved my life. Although I know that palace maids with disfigured faces shouldn't be kept in the palace, I still insisted on keeping her. Once she was driven out, there was no way she could survive. He didn't expect that there was such a reason. Hui Mo was surprised and ashamed. He clenched his fist and bowed deeply. I didn't expect Mama to be such a righteous person. I was rude and offended Mama. Mama, please forgive me. The misunderstanding was over. Yin Jiaoyi said a few more polite words and left with Xu Shui. When their figures completely disappeared, Hui Mo's expression changed. He immediately jumped back and said mysteriously, Your Highness, I feel that there is something wrong with Yin Jiaoyi. Chapter 443. Xiahou Qing extended his arm and walked unhurriedly with Juice's support on the pebbled flower path. He wanted to hear more. What's the problem? Hui Mo wanted to express himself. Look, they said they were here to look for Huan Pei, but they left before they found it. Isn't that strange? Xiahou Qing nodded. Is there anything else? Continue. There's more. There's something wrong with that nanny too. I clearly remember when we walked out from behind the rockery and found her. When I first saw her, her gaze was very strange. She stared at me like an awl and there was no expression on her face. It was like a puppet made by the craftsman to exorcise ghosts. In the blink of an eye, she quickly changed her expression. She bowed in fear and trepidation and begged for mercy. The difference between before and after was too big. Moreover, her movements were so light that Juicy and I didn't notice. Fortunately, you have excellent hearing and caught it quickly. Otherwise, who knows what she heard? Lastly, there's one more thing. We just started to interrogate this nanny and Yin Jiaoyi rushed over. This timing is too coincidental and timely. If this isn't a problem, then what is? I'm starting to suspect that she was sent by Yin Jiaoyi to eavesdrop. It seems that this weak and timid Yin Jiaoyi, who has never had a sense of existence, is very suspicious. Xiahou Qing said lightly, not only her, the people we met today were all very strange, weren't they? Princess Royal Xiao Mingxue, Prince Ku, Xiao Minglan, and this seemingly harmless Yin Jiaoyi. The people they suspected were all gathered at the same place on the same day. How could they not be surprised? With strong doubts, they returned to Weiyang Palace. Xiao Minglan's seat was indeed empty. Princess Royal continued to accompany His Majesty and Cao Hu to chat. Perhaps no one would have guessed that not long ago, her face was filled with embarrassment and fragility. One would become addicted to wearing a fake face for a long time. Unknowingly, the fake face would blend into one's skin and flesh, completely replacing the real one. This woman enjoyed the most unique respect and irreplaceable position in the imperial family. Even the empress respected her. Her husband was also the most famous Tanhua in the past. They had been deeply in love for many years. It seemed to be a perfect life, but who could guess how many lice were hidden under the beautiful clothes? According to the original plan, when the banquet was nearing its end, Princess Changping's servant girl would appear in a panic and report the bad news that the princess had contracted smallpox. But when the time came, there was no news. Even Southern Yang's diplomatic mission had asked His Majesty to leave. Xiahou Qing frowned and said to Hui Mo in a low voice, "Go and ask him what happened." Hui Mo received the order and glanced around. When no one was looking, he quietly left the banquet. After half an incense stick's time, he came back and leaned over to Xiahou Qing's ear and said, "When I left, I met Princess Changping who sent a message saying that she had changed her mind. She thought about it all night and suddenly understood that since she had enjoyed the honor of being the imperial princess for 15 years, she should bear the corresponding responsibility. For the safety of the people and the stability of Great Yu, she had no reason to run away. Otherwise, she would live in self-blame for the rest of her life. So she decided to cancel the original plan." Xiahou Qing's eyebrows seemed to be pricked by a needle. A bad premonition arose and drilled into his heart, causing him to feel pain from the inside out. He clutched his chest and said, "Then what about Ning Shu? Where is she?" Hui Mo said, "The princess said that Lady Ning was very tired these days, so she left the palace early to rest. She asked you not to worry." It was reasonable to say that the unruly little princess suddenly understood righteousness. In fact, it wasn't a bad thing. Moreover, it saved them a lot of trouble and they didn't have to offend her anymore. But he didn't know why, but his master's face suddenly changed. He stood up and said, "Something might have happened to her. Immediately go and stop Xiao Changping. Chapter 444. Hui Mo hurriedly chased after him and supported him. He didn't understand and asked, "Eh? Why do you say that?" Xiahou Qing's voice was extremely tense. She has never been a delicate woman. Things are not over yet and there is always the possibility of changes. She would never leave early because she is tired. This is one of the reasons. She entered the palace before the time was up. Even if Princess Changping decided to cancel the banquet, she shouldn't have sent the news so late. It is also impossible for her to leave the palace before she finished communicating with us. This is the second reason. The third reason, what is the third reason? Xiahou Qing raised his head, his face as cold as ice. My premonition. His heart was in great pain. There was no reason, but a premonition was telling him that something had happened to her. If he didn't immediately rush over to stop him, then he would regret it. Hui Mo didn't say anything else and immediately supported him out of the hall. Just as they reached the palace gates, they were suddenly stopped by a figure. It was the fourth prince, Xiao Yunsu. Hui Mo saw his malicious expression and knew that he was here to cause trouble. However, there was an important matter at hand and he didn't have time to waste on this person. Thus, he politely said, "Fourth prince, my family's Shizi has an important matter and has to leave first. Your Highness, please move." "Move?" Xiao Yunsu sneered, his gaze sweeping over them. "Today's banquet is hosted by my father, but Xia Hu Shizi has repeatedly left the banquet. Do you think the Imperial Palace is your Nanping Mansion's territory? You don't put the Emperor in your eyes." Without Xiao Minglan stopping him, Xiao Yunsu was like a dog that had broken free from its chain. He started to bark crazily and wanted to tear Xiahou Qing to shreds before he stopped. The officials who were leaning against the palace gate all turned their gazes over. If it was any other time, Xiahou Qing wouldn't have the leisure to argue with a mad dog. He would just endure and laugh. However, at this time, he didn't have the mood nor the patience to endure. "Please move." His voice was like cold jade. This was the first time he showed his strength in front of Xiao Yunsu. Xiao Yunsu was taken aback at first, then he sneered. He lowered his chin, and his eyes looked as if they had been dipped in poison. He curled his lips and revealed his canine teeth. He deliberately provoked, "What if this prince doesn't give in today? Do you want to kill me in this Weiyang palace in front of my father?" Xiahou Qing also smiled. It was extremely light, like a gust of wind that carelessly blew across the surface of the water, causing slight ripples. He retracted his hand from Hui Mo and took a step forward, approaching Xiao Yunsu. Xiao Yunsu clearly knew that his eyes could no longer see, but for some reason, when he stared at the black cloth in front of his eyes, he suddenly felt a chill from the depths of his bones that could not be ignored. It was as if someone was stabbing him in the back with a dagger. As long as there was a little bit more force, he would be cut open and die. He heard Xiahou Qing say softly in front of him, "Fourth prince, do you think your life is important? Even if I really kill you in this Weiyang palace, what will happen? You." Xiao Yunsu did not think that he would dare to reveal his killing intent so openly. He was immediately stunned. However, Xiahou Qing took a step forward, forcing him back. His voice was deeper and colder than before, like a ruthless bell ringing in Xiao Yunsu's head, deafening even the apathetic. "My Nanping Palace has existed for more than 200 years, as long as the Great Yu. Every new emperor has thought of razing Nanping Palace to the ground, but none have succeeded. What do you think the reason is? My Nanping Palace is the gate to the Great Yu. If the palace is defeated, the gate will be broken. Especially now that Southern Yang is coming with a menacing momentum, the situation is precarious, and war could erupt at any time. Fourth prince, you think that a dispensable prince who can be replaced at any time or an important gate to the Great Yu? Which is more important in His Majesty's eyes? Moreover, your mother has already lost her mind, and there is no chance of her returning to favor. The Qi family is like a monkey with a broken arm, unable to support you. Under these circumstances, even if I really kill you, what harm will it do to me? Chapter 445. Under such a merciless voice, Xiao Yunsu's lips turned white and he couldn't help but clutch his chest. His whole body broke out in a cold sweat. Xiao Qing continued to speak, each word was like a block of ice being thrown at Xiao Yunsu. I don't know where your enmity towards me comes from, and I don't know who instigated you to target me. If you're worried about your throne, then that's ridiculous. The things that you regard as treasures might be worthless in my eyes. No matter who sits on the throne in the future, they will have nothing to do with me, Xiao Qing. I have no intention of participating in the battle between you two, but if you insist on seeking your own death, then I, Xiao Qing, will do as you wish. In addition, I'll give your highness one last piece of advice. A puppet in the hands of others will never be able to stand at the highest position. You will only become a pool of rotten blood for that position. I hope your highness will take this as a warning. As Xiao Qing's last word fell, Xiao Yunsu's entire body shuddered. His feet had nowhere to retreat, and he tripped heavily on the doorstep. He almost fell down, but Xiao Qing grabbed him by the collar. Xiao Qing smiled faintly, and he'd already recovered his usual carefree and immortal appearance. It was as if the person from before who had sharp claws like an eagle wasn't him at all. He said, "The fourth prince can't stand and can't stand properly. Hui Mo, hurry and help the fourth prince back to the banquet table to rest." Yes. Hui Mo's heart was overjoyed. He skipped over to help Xiao Yunsu up. "Fourth prince, please. This time you must stand firm and don't fall again. Otherwise, my family's young master won't be able to pull you up again. Fourth prince, do you understand?" Xiao Yunsu stiffly raised his head and saw a large drop of cold sweat dripping from his forehead to the ground. He also saw that after Xiao Qing finished speaking, he didn't stop for a moment. With Jusai's help, he brushed his clothes aside and stepped over the threshold. He suddenly realized that he had actually felt great fear towards Xiao Qing earlier. This kind of fear would only occur when facing his father's anger. He was so scared that his entire body trembled. He almost wanted to prostrate himself and beg for mercy. If it was in front of his imperial father, then it would be fine. That was his imperial father, the supreme ruler of the 9 regions. But this person was Xiao Qing, a small prince of Nanping. He was a lackey of the Xiao family. And who was he? The Great Yu's imperial eldest prince with the noblest bloodline? Preposterous. After a short pause, Xiao Yunsu's chest was suddenly filled with anger. It burned uncontrollably. This anger made him push Hui Mo away and pull out the saber on the waist of the guard beside him. He threw it towards Xiao Qing's back. "Go to hell. Xiao Qing, die for me," Hui Mo said in alarm. "Prince, be careful." Jusai immediately stopped and turned around to block. Xiao Qing opened his mouth and said indifferently, "No need." He ordered Jusai to step back and stand to the side. Then his ears moved slightly. He spun around and grabbed the sword in his hand. Xiao Yunyi, Xiao Yun Center, and the others who heard the news looked at him in shock. With a shake of his arm, the sword broke into 2 pieces and fell to the ground. He said, "My eyes are blind, but my ears are not blind. My heart is not blind. If there is a next time, you can use the same sword." Xiao Yunsu turned his neck in fear and met his imperial father's furious eyes. He watched as his imperial father reached out and scolded him, "Bastard." Chapter 446. Xiao Qing threw down the broken knife, turned around and left, leaving the dispute behind. Hui Mo glanced at Xiao Yunsu and gave him a pitiful glance. TSK, I've never seen someone so eager to die. If it was any other time, my family's Shizi Yi might not have the time to bother with you. But you chose to rush out at the critical moment when Miss Ning is in trouble. You're a dog that blocks the road. This time you're done for. Sure enough, His Majesty slapped Xiao Yunsu in anger. Xiao Yunsu only realized what he had done after blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. But it was too late. His brain buzzed and he quickly begged for mercy. "Father, I was wrong. Recently, Lady Mother is seriously ill and her condition is getting worse. I was so anxious that I lost my mind and offended Xiao Shizi. I know I was wrong. Please spare your son this once. Xiahou Shizi, you're a magnanimous person. Please ask father for mercy for me. But Xiahou Qing turned a deaf ear to him. That calm and straight figure quickly disappeared at the end of the palace road. Xiao Yunsu finally understood. When Xiahou Qing gave him face, it was called face. If he didn't, then he, the fourth prince, was nothing in Xiahou Qing's eyes. Hui Mo walked around Xiao Yunsu, who was immersed in resentment, and quickly followed Xiahou Shizi and Juice's footsteps. He originally wanted to ask why they had been hiding their strength for so many years. They had portrayed Xiahou Shizi as a weak and sickly person. But today, in front of His Majesty, under the gaze of so many people in Weiyang Palace, they were completely exposed. Wasn't this too careless? But when he looked up and saw Xiahou Shizi's tense face, he suddenly had the answer. So he closed his mouth and bowed. Xiahou Shizi, I'll go to the palace gate and ask the guards if Lady Ning's carriage has left the palace. After getting Xiahou Qing's approval, Hui Mo rushed towards the palace gate. Xiao Zhangping's palace was located in the most remote southwest corner of the imperial palace. Most of the people who lived here were imperial concubines who were not favored or had long been forgotten in the cold palace. As a result, this area seemed particularly cold and cheerless in the majestic imperial palace. However, today, there was a rare festive atmosphere nearby. Even the trees along the path were wrapped in a layer of red brocade. This was because today was the day that 13th Princess Xiao Zhongping was going to the southern Yang Kingdom as a diplomatic envoy for the peace marriage. By the time Xiahou Qing arrived, Xiao Zhongping had already changed into a set of red robes and was sitting in his bedroom with a veil over his head. He was waiting for the southern Yang Kingdom's diplomatic team to arrive so that he could receive the palanquin and leave the palace. Henceforth, it would be difficult for his soul to return from 1,000 li away. When she heard the palace servant report that Xiahou Qing had forced his way in, Xiao Zhangping's eyes flashed. She immediately lifted her veil and ran towards him. She said, Xiahou Shizi, are you here to say goodbye to me? Her eyes were full of anticipation and she couldn't help herself. However, she didn't expect that Xiahou Qing's first words would be a cold and forceful question, where's Ning Shu? The anticipation in her eyes shattered into pieces and fell to the ground. Xiao Zhangping's heart ached. She laughed at herself and said, I thought that you would at least be a little reluctant to part with me and come to see me one last time before saying a few final words to me. I didn't expect that the first thing you asked about was Ning Shu. Xiahou Shizi, it seems like you really don't care about me at all. The light of the summer poured down on his entire body, causing him to be covered in a layer of light. He was as beautiful as a deity. Under this layer of light, he heard the chirping of cicadas in the trees. He couldn't help but lean his ear to listen carefully. He said, Princess Zhongping, all these years, I've always regarded you as a close friend and younger sister. This is because I always remember that when I first lost my sense of smell and was being teased, it was you who stood out and knocked over the bowl of sweet soup in front of me. Chapter 447. Xiao Zhangping's thoughts floated in the dust of light. His eyes were absent-minded as he slowly returned to the past. Are you talking about that matter? I didn't expect the heir to still remember. It seemed to be the first time the heir apparent entered the palace. In the throne room, he wrote a policy debate that shook the entire Shuemi courtyard. In order to repel the Xiongnu, he set up a heroic deed. In an instant, the young man's heroic name spread throughout the palace. But I was only 4 years old at the time. I didn't have the wit to understand the heir's contributions because I was busy stealing things. I was probably the only princess who often stole food from the imperial kitchen. Because I ate simple tea and plain food every day, I was often hungry. So I often lingered around the imperial kitchen, looking for opportunities to sneak in and take some pastries back to share with my mother. It was the same at that time. But just as I was about to sneak in, I saw fourth imperial brother sneak in with a few other young masters. He secretly put a filthy animal part in the sweet soup that His Majesty gave you. He said something like, you were in the limelight in the throne room, but you're just a piece of trash who doesn't even have a sense of smell. This prince wants to see how you can show off after eating this filthy thing. I thought I heard something incredible and was extremely scared. So I hid far away. But I don't know why, but my great curiosity drove me to quietly follow them. I wanted to see what would happen. Then I saw the palace servants bring the bowl of soup to the heir. Then I saw you. A girl's mind couldn't be enlightened. Sometimes when she saw someone, she would remember that person for the rest of her life. A 4-year-old's glance was like a seed. She suddenly had an epiphany on her first night. In an instant, it grew and sprouted into a flower. Xiahou Qing's voice was like the wind. So no matter how many outrageous requests you made, I could laugh them off and even try to satisfy you. However, there was one thing you shouldn't touch, and you can't touch. You're talking about her, Ningxu? The distant past was like a colorful bubble that was pierced by a single sentence. It made Xiao Zhangping's chest constrict. She was so angry that she couldn't speak. A lot of unwillingness hit her like a huge wave, completely messing up her reason. She had a lot of questions. She wanted to ask, I was the one who met you first. We were the ones who were tied together first. Why did you choose her instead of me? I want to ask, what's so good about Ningxu and what's so bad about me? If I change, will you consider me a little? She wanted to ask, you're so determined to have her, but what if you don't have her? If she never existed in this world, then what are you going to do? If she wasn't there, even if she was there, wouldn't it be better to just make her disappear? Then make her disappear. Make her disappear completely. The world's most viscous darkness was born from the bottom of his heart. There was no trace of it, but it had already silently occupied his entire body. The last bit of guilt was completely suppressed. She took a deep breath, raised her head, and changed her expression to one of calmness. She said, Your Highness misunderstood. Ningxu is not with me. After she entered the palace, I told her my thoughts after a night of deep thought. I did not intend to run away from the marriage. She respected my thoughts very much, so she left the palace first. I already sent a palace servant to report this matter to you. Could it be that the palace servant didn't pass on the message? Hong Fei, how did you do things? You dared to gloss over such an important matter. Be careful of this princess's punishment. Hong Fei immediately knelt down and said, Princess, please calm down. This servant has already passed on the message to your highness bodyguard. This servant really didn't neglect it. Oh. Then where did it go wrong? Xiao Zhongping was surprised and looked at Xiahou Qing. Could it be that the bodyguard forgot to pass on the message to your highness, causing this misunderstanding? Chapter 448. Her expression was blank and sincere. It didn't seem fake at all. Xiahou Qing said, Princess Changping, I don't have time to play this kind of childish game with you. Tell me, where is Ningxu? Xiao Zhongping let out a sigh. It seems that the heir doesn't believe me. In that case, you can go to the palace gates and ask to see if I'm lying. As soon as Xiao Zhongping's voice fell, Hui Mo hurriedly rushed over. He didn't even have time to wipe the sweat off his forehead before he said, Master, I just asked the palace guards. They said that Lady Ning's carriage did indeed leave the palace 2 hours ago. When they checked the real body, they saw that it was Lady Ning's real body. Xiao Zhongping clenched her fists and pulled up the corners of her lips. Now the heir should believe me. Of course, if you still don't believe me, I'll let you search the entire palace. If you can find Ningxu in my palace, I, Xiao Zhongping, will give you my head as compensation. She turned sideways and ordered the palace guards to leave. She directly made way for Xiahou Qing. This kind of magnanimous and fearless attitude made Hui Mo somewhat unsure. He whispered, Heir, could it be that you're thinking too much and misunderstanding? Perhaps things are as simple as Princess Changping said. Lady Ning felt that the matter was over. Last night, she was tired from running around and didn't sleep well. She thought that Princess Changping would send someone to report, so there was no need for her to make another trip and left first. If they really searched and didn't find anything, the scene would be awkward. Xiahou Qing didn't care at all and said in a deep voice, Juicy, search. Hey. Juice's actions were very strong. Before Hui Mo could react, He had already walked into the hall with a wooden face. He carefully searched inch by inch, even under the bed. Hui Mo turned his head to look at Xiao Zhongping. Her face was covered with a veil, only revealing a pair of eyes. Her face revealed a deep sadness, as if she was hurt from head to toe. Under the contrast of her red wedding dress, she looked even more sorrowful. For some reason, Hui Mo's mind was in a mess. A moment later, Ju Sai walked out and shook his head. "Young master, we didn't find him." Xiahou Qing frowned. He was puzzled and doubtful. However, it was an indisputable fact that he couldn't find it. Judging from the current evidence, he might have really wronged Xiao Zhongping, but why was the feeling of suffocation in his chest still lingering? "Ning Shu, nothing must happen to you." Filled with worry, Xiahou Qing clasped his hands and bowed solemnly. "Princess Changping, I have offended you. I will personally pay you a visit one day to apologize." Looking at his travel-worn back, Xiao Zhongping grinned and muttered to himself, "It seems like you really put her at the top of your heart. Have you forgotten that I'm about to leave this place forever? How can there be another day?" A teardrop fell from Xiao Zhongping's eyes. Exhausted, Xiao Zhongping squatted on the ground and covered her cheeks, letting the big drops of tears wet her fingers. Seeing her tears, Hui Mo hurriedly took out a brand new handkerchief and hurriedly bent down to hand it over. Don't cry anymore. I don't know what to do when you cry. You still have cowpox on your body. It's not good for you to cry. Take good care of yourself in the future." Xiao Zhongping angrily slapped the handkerchief, which had a faint fragrance of green bamboo, onto the ground. Chapter 449. After leaving the palace, Hui Mo rushed to the house of Duke without stopping. He didn't care about etiquette and flew up a tree to summon Forsythia. He asked anxiously, "Little Forsythia, where is your lady? Is she in the house?" Forsythia frowned. "She's not here. When she went out this morning, she said that she had something important to do in the palace. She was afraid that she would be delayed for a while. She asked me to cover for her in front of the madam. She suddenly became nervous. What's wrong? Did something happen to her?" Hui Mo's heart thumped, but he pretended to be relaxed. "Don't think too much. It's just that my Shizzy is looking for her for an urgent matter. He couldn't find her for a while. You stay in the house of Duke. When your lady comes back, immediately send someone to inform her. I'll go first." Leaving the house of Duke, Hui Mo mounted his horse and rushed to the place where they had agreed to meet. Just as he reported the news to Xiahou Qing, he saw Tian Wen sweating profusely as he tightened his grip on the reins and stopped the horse. Xiahou Qing listened carefully and immediately said, "Tian Wen, what's the result of the investigation?" Tian Wen didn't talk much nonsense and directly said, "Some passers-by saw Lady Ning's carriage leaving the palace gate. It went through Xuanwu Street and went out of the city. The last person who saw the carriage was at a tea house 3 miles away from the city gate. As the sun gradually rose, the owner of the tea house was busy selling tea. As soon as he looked up, he saw a magnificent carriage slowly stop. He heard the young lady inside say that she was thirsty and asked a maid to buy a cup of tea. After drinking, the carriage continued to go west. After that, no one saw it again. Why did Lady Ning go to the western suburbs? Go all the way to the west, the meaning is not. Hui Mo almost blurted out the word auspicious. Hui Mo quickly slapped his own mouth and spat twice. He stood aside obediently and waited for his master's order. He did not want to talk nonsense. Xiahou Qing's usually calm and collected face was now extremely tense. He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me the horsewhip." Hui Mo was stunned. He hurriedly advised, "You forgot that you can't see. It's too dangerous to ride the horse. Let's get on the carriage. I'll use all my strength to ride the horse. I must make the carriage run faster." But Xiahou Qing said, "The carriage is too slow, I can't wait. Tian Wen and Shi Yang will lead the way. Huemore and Juicy will follow behind me. Don't worry, I'm not deaf. I won't let anything happen to me. There's no time to lose. Give me the horsewhip now." Since he was so insistent, the others had no choice but to follow his orders. Therefore, the group of people rode their horses out of the city at the fastest speed and headed west. The overly bright summer sun enveloped his entire body, causing his forehead to drip with sweat. His jade-colored face revealed an unusual paleness, but he did not make a sound. He bent his body and urged his horse forward, listening attentively. He was like a mountain in the wind. The 2-hour journey was shortened by half by them. When they arrived at the tea house, they asked the owner of the tea house a few more questions. The carriage style and carvings were the same as the one in the house of Marquis. It should be the carriage that Ning Shu rode. I just asked the owner of the tea house. If we continue to head west, there will be a fork in the road. What should we do, Prince? Should we divide into 3 groups and continue to chase? Hui Mo was in a dilemma. It was not impossible to divide into 3 groups, but the problem was, what if they encountered another fork in the road ahead? Lady Ning's carriage was faster than them by 2 hours. If they continued to chase like this, no matter how many people they had, they would not be enough. On the horseback, Xiahou Qing suppressed a burst of coughing in his chest and said in a deep voice, "Look at the total number of ruts on the ground." After hearing Xiahou Qing's words, Hui Mo immediately thought about it. He and Tian Wen got off the horse and bent down to check carefully. There are a total of 14 ruts that can be seen clearly. They belong to 7 carriages. Among them, 3 pairs of ruts are surprisingly in the same direction. They should belong to the same group of carriages. These 3 pairs can be ruled out. Among the remaining 4 pairs of ruts, 2 pairs are relatively clear. They should belong to carriages that just passed by. They can also be ruled out. This pair of ruts is very deep. They have eaten into the soil. This kind of situation is usually left by a carriage carrying something heavy. There were only 3 people in Miss Ning's carriage, and they were all slender girls. Logically speaking, they shouldn't have left such a deep mark. The other half of the mark must have been left by the horse. "Prince, let's follow it." Without further ado, they continued to get on the horse. Not long after, they suddenly smelled a pungent smell of gunpowder in front of them. Along with the hot wind, they could not help but sneeze. Ju Sai was very careful. He immediately reined in the horse and said, "Prince, this smell is not right. I am afraid there is danger in front. Please wait here for a while. I will go to the front to inquire about the situation. I will be back soon. Go." Tian Wen had sharp ears and eyes. He was the best at inquiring about information. He also said, "I will go with you." The 2 winged cavalry immediately rushed away. Huemo and Shi Yang stayed at Xiahou Qing, waiting for news. However, they did not expect that after waiting for a long time, they did not see anyone return. They could not help but feel anxious. Just as they were thinking about whether to send someone to check, they came back. Ju Sai's expression was very strange. Tian Wen had always been jumpy, but it was the first time that Huemo had seen such a strange expression on Ju Sai's face. It was as if he had just witnessed something very strange. It was extremely terrible. It was as if he could not bear to say it. Xiahou Qing frowned. Huemo was very anxious. "Hey, why are you guys making such a strange expression? What happened in front of us? Tell me quickly." Ju Sai and Tian Wen looked at each other. It was as if they had made a very difficult decision in a short time. Finally, Ju Sai whispered, "There is a firecracker workshop in front of us. It exploded." Shi Yang asked, "Isn't it common for firecracker workshops to explode? There are many of them every year. What happened? Could it be that someone was injured by the explosion?" Ju Sai looked at Xiahou Qing hesitantly and said slowly, "The passers-by said that they saw a carriage passing by when the explosion happened. The people inside and the carriage were blown to pieces. And the style of the carriage. Shizzy." Xiahou Qing's hand missed and he immediately fell from the horse. Ju Sai was already prepared and immediately jumped over to support him. However, he saw that Xiahou Qing's throat rolled and suddenly a mouthful of blood slipped out from his mouth. "This is... Hui Mo, where is the medicine? Quickly bring it." Xiahou Qing stretched out his hand to stop him. He raised his hand and wiped the blood off his mouth. He hissed word by word, "No. need, take. I don't believe it's her. Help me. Get on the horse. Sit. I want to see. Chapter 450. In front of him was a smell so strong that it made one's scalp tingle. The pungent smell of gunpowder, charcoal, and the stench of human flesh and blood being torn apart mixed together in the hot and humid air. It was tyrannical and cruel, stinging enough to make one want to vomit. Weeping, fear, lamenting, and wailing filled his ears. They were like knives that pierced his eardrums, stabbing into the softest and most painful parts of his body, causing his internal organs to turn into a mess and blood to flow like a river. Xiahou Qing dismounted from the horse's back. With a pale face and an indifferent expression, he passed through the mournful crowd that had lost their family members and friends in the explosion. Under Juice's guidance, he stopped in front of the wreckage of the carriage that had been shattered into several pieces. In the summer breeze, the black brocade in front of him fluttered behind him, making his face even paler. Only his lips were bright red. He asked, "Where is she?" Even someone as calm and indifferent as Ju Sai found it difficult to summon up the courage to look around again. The firecracker workshop was still burning. The raging flames emitted black smoke into the sky, obscuring the image of the bright sun. An artisan desperately trying to escape from the workshop did not receive the blessings of the god of fate. He was blown to pieces at the door, and the delicate body of the young girl could not withstand a single blow. The broken axle scattered the remains of flesh everywhere. There was only a broken hairpin embedded in the pitch-black pothole. The pattern of the hairpin was vivid and lifelike, and half of it was cracked. He said with difficulty, "It's gone. It's all in pieces." Xiahou Qing immediately curled his lips into a sneer and said coldly, "It's all in pieces. How can you prove it's her? You've been by my side for many years. Can't you tell it's just a smokescreen? How can you believe it so easily? Ju Sai, let's go home." Ju Sai said again. A broken golden hairpin was found on the ground. "It looks like the one Lady Ning usually wears." The sneer on Xiahou Qing's face deepened, and his voice became hoarser. "Anyone can imitate a golden hairpin. It's also possible that she accidentally lost it or stole it. This scheme is so clumsy. You want me to believe that the dead person is her based on a golden hairpin? Ridiculous." Heaven's Inquisition, who had been squatting at the crime scene and carefully searching, suddenly found something in the broken palm that was still intact. He hurriedly called out, "There's something in this palm, quickly help me dig it out." Hui Mo answered and took out the thing with the help of the dissecting knife. After wiping off the ashes and skin fragments, he was stunned. A strong sour smell rushed to the tip of his nose, and his eyes turned red on the spot. With trembling hands, he slowly placed the hot object into Xiahou Qing's palm. It was a piece of suet white jade of excellent quality. It had been carved into the shape of a swimming fish by the hands of a master. It felt smooth to the touch. On his 16th birthday, his father had carefully selected it as a birthday gift for him. It meant that the fish had a shallow bottom and was free to become a dragon. He was very fond of it, so he had carried it with him for many years, until that unexpected night 4 months ago, when he met a cunning woman who was as cunning as a fox, and then she took him away. Xiahou Qing slightly curved his lips and smiled, like a fish gently kissing the water. "Oh, I didn't expect that she had been wearing it all this time. I don't know when she started to have ideas about this shizzy." Then his heart was torn, and he spat out another mouthful of blood from his throat. He stiffly fell to the back. Shizzy. Chapter 451. She heard the sound of people weeping. There were many, densely intertwined together, surrounding a coffin and crying loudly. She saw many tears rolling down from the eyes, dripping into the soil in front of the coffin, dripping onto the cheeks and lapels of many people. One of the owners of the lapels clung to the coffin with both hands, looking at the pieces of charred corpses inside. He cried until his whole body convulsed and fainted several times. "My Shu-er. My one and only precious daughter." She clearly still looked charming and gentle, but for some reason, there was a strand of white hair growing out of her temples. Next to her was a 4 or 5-year-old child, looking white and soft, with a pair of big round eyes shining with huge tears. He tried his best to reach out his small hand to comfort his grieving mother, but he couldn't help but throw himself in front of the coffin, waving his short arms to prevent the craftsman from closing the coffin lid. "Get out of the way, don't touch my sister, don't lock my sister in there alone. Woo-woo. Sister, sister." A man in his 40s, wearing a high hat and a wide belt, also stood there with a face full of pain, holding his throwing tantrums in his arms, but when he saw the miserable state of his beloved daughter again, his footsteps became weak and he almost stumbled and fell, with tears streaming down his face. A round-faced person, who looked very soft and good-tempered, came forward to support him and comfort him, but when he turned his head, his eyes were also red. There was another person, standing under the camphor wood 10 jong away, looking in the direction of the coffin in the distance. This person was very strange. It was clearly a hot summer day, but he was wearing a dark robe, with a brocade of the same color in front of his eyes, fluttering behind him even though there was no wind. She thought that this person must be a weirdo, dressed like this. Wasn't he afraid of dying from the heat? However, this person had a good appearance. Although she couldn't see his eyes, the other parts of his body that were exposed could be regarded as the best in the world. His eyebrows were picturesque, his nose was like a heavenly carving, and his lips were especially beautiful. If they were a bit thicker, it would be too much, and if they were a bit thinner, it would appear fickle. Just like this, neither thick nor thin, it was just right. The tip of his lips slightly curved, making people unable to help but feel restless. If there was a drop of wine on the tip of his lips, then he would truly be the most beautiful woman in the world. It was a pity that the color of his lips was abnormally pale, as if he was suffering from some serious illness. Even the rest of his skin was extremely white, like a ball of snow. She thought to herself that she couldn't do that. The sunlight was so glaring. If she accidentally melted under the sun, it would be such a pity for the human world. Look, a part of the black brocade in front of him had already melted under the sun. Otherwise, how could it show the dark color of being soaked in water? She couldn't help but float closer to that person. After listening to him being silent for a long time, he gently moved his thin lips and smiled bleakly. "I thought highly of myself for 21 years, but in the end, I couldn't even protect the person I loved. I've really made my life a complete joke." She didn't know why, but this sentence was like a knife, gouging out the part of her heart that was constantly beating. She forcefully threw it to the ground. The ground was covered in blood, and she was in so much pain that she couldn't stand up. The countless cries all around were like countless whips, whipping her until the tip of her nose was sore. Her internal organs were in so much pain that they were twitching. She couldn't help but reach out her hands, wanting to grab those people's arms and wipe their tears, telling them to stop crying. So she reached out her hands and forcefully grabbed. "Fourth young miss, you're awake." An unfamiliar voice suddenly reached her ears and grabbed her hands, pulling her back from the distant illusory realm. Ning Shu immediately opened her eyes. Chapter 452. In front of her was the roof of a carriage. Her 4 limbs felt the even vibration of the carriage wheels, which told her that her estimation was correct. This was a carriage that wasn't too big, nor was it conspicuous. Only 2 or 3 people could sit inside. She was lying in the arms of a young girl. The young girl was quite young. Her hair was combed into 2 buns like a servant girl. Her eyes weren't big and she had an oval face. She was lying down, so the young girl could only kneel down. Although the carriage wasn't big, the decorations could be considered neat. There were cushions for shock, a small couch for resting, and the carved patterns on the inner walls showed an exotic style. However, her head hurt so much that it felt like it was about to split open. Her mind was groggy, full yet empty. All her memories seemed to have been forcefully trapped, piled up, and stuffed into a corner. They seemed to be there, but she just couldn't recall them. She could only forcefully press her temples, barely suppressing the pain. After briefly observing the surrounding situation, Ning Shu said with a hoarse voice, "What did you call me?" The servant girl said without hesitation, "Fourth young miss." "Who else could it be?" "Ah, fourth young miss, you couldn't have hit your head that time, right?" The doctor clearly said it wasn't a big deal. That doctor must be a quack. Ning Shu wrinkled her brows and pressed her fingers on her temples. "I hit my head before. My head hurts so much that I can't remember anything. Can you tell me what exactly happened?" The servant girl sighed. "Ari, this is a long story. My family's master, that is, young Mrs. Father, is a silk merchant in southern Yang. His family's wealth is very good. Although it can't be said that his wealth is comparable to a country, buying 3 to 5 cities is not an exaggeration. You are the Manor's fourth young Miss. Madam has been waiting for you for many years. She gave birth to you through a difficult labor and raised you like a pearl in the palm of her hand. But when you were 3 years old, Master and Madam took you to the Lantern Festival to play and admire the lanterns. You played very happily. However, there was an accident. A lion dance team suddenly rushed out and separated you from Master and Madam. Master and Madam desperately tried to pass through the lion dance team, but you had already disappeared. Master and Madam searched the entire city but couldn't find you. Later, they found out that the lion dance troupe was a group of human traffickers. They would come out on festive days to create chaos and steal other people's children. They would then abduct and sell them to neighboring countries or remote mountain villages. Master and Madam were devastated, but they never gave up looking for you. 13 years later, that is, 2 months ago, someone found you in a brothel in the capital of Great Yu. After comparing you to Madam, they found a scar on your palm. Chapter 453. Hearing the servant girl's tearful narration, Ning Shu instinctively frowned and continued, "Then what is my name?" "Your maiden name is Linlang, White Jade Linlang, fourth in the family. You have 3 elder brothers and a Shu sister. They are all very friendly and kind people. Of course, you may not be used to this name. You haven't used it for more than a decade. You will slowly get used to it in the future. Right, look at this servant's brain, I forgot to say my name." The servant girl slapped her head and wiped away her tears. She said with a smile, "This servant is Pangui. This is the name that Furan personally bestowed. I hope that Miss will return home soon. So it's like this." Ning Shu lowered her eyes. If it was as Pangui said, that she was unfortunate enough to end up in a brothel and suffer for more than a decade. One day, she would return home. Her family was rich, her brothers were honest, her sisters were kind, her parents were all deeply in love and only hoped for her return. She should be overjoyed. But why was her heart so calm and unruffled? She felt unfamiliar, as though the person she spoke of had nothing to do with her. In the dream, the sorrowful cries of Shu-er echoed in her mind. It was like a knife cutting at her heart, causing her limbs to feel numb and the pain to penetrate her heart. She moved and then realized that the right side of her face was bandaged. She instinctively wanted to tear it off but was stopped by Pangui. She said with a nervous expression, "Fourth miss, what are you doing?" Her momentary panic caused Ning Shu to say blankly, "I just feel that the cloth is too thick and I can't breathe. So I want to tear it off a bit to get some air." "What is it?" Pangue's gaze dodged and then she said reproachfully, "You fell down the stairs, saw blood, and your face was injured. So I helped you bandage it. The doctor said that you must not tear it off in the next few days. Otherwise, if it leaves a scar in the future, you will cry." Ning Shu smiled. "All right, if you say so, then so be it." The carriage followed behind the long procession, rumbling forward at a constant speed. She looked out from the corner of the fluttering carriage curtain, looking at the bustling streets that seemed strange yet familiar. She looked at the people passing by with familiar accents, chatting and laughing with their friends, bargaining with the shopkeepers. She looked at the ridge on the corner of the city gate getting closer and closer. She thought for a moment and said, "Are we going out of the city?" Pangui nodded and said happily, "Yes, we can leave this place and return to our homeland of the southern Yang after a while." Ning Shu's gaze lingered on a tall horse in front of the convoy. Sitting on the horse was a young noble who was close to 20 years old. He was wearing a scarlet cloak and had a tall and straight figure with slender limbs. But for some reason, that person's mood didn't seem to be good. His entire body was filled with a lonely and evil aura, causing people to retreat. Looking at his blurry silhouette, a strange feeling floated through Ningshu's heart. She said, "Who is that?" Pangui pulled the carriage curtain back and said with a panicked expression, "Ah, that is the 6th Prince of Great Yu. He is under the orders of the Emperor to escort the vice-envoy and the princess out of the city. I heard that this person has a strange temper and kills people like scything flax. We should keep a respectful distance." Ningshu's gaze floated to her unconsciously clenched hands and then she calmly retracted it. She said with a smile, "It's just a glance. Why are you so nervous? If you act like this, I will think that I have some conflict with him in the past and you won't let me see him." Pangui realized that his reaction was too much and hurriedly covered it up. No. You didn't know each other before. This servant just heard that this prince's reputation isn't good. We are about to leave Great Yu. It's best if we don't cause trouble. This way, we can return home safely and smoothly. Young miss, don't think too much. Ningshu blinked and became curious. It sounds like after you came to the capital, you have inquired a lot about this place. Otherwise, how would you know what kind of reputation their prince has? Why don't you tell me about it? Caution flashed through Pangue's eyes. "Fourth young miss, why are you asking this?" Ningshu's pair of watery eyes were limpid and bright. She gently said, "What I mean is, I have already left southern Yang for more than 10 years and have been living in Great Yu's capital all this time. I presume that the things I have heard are all strange things here, so I wanted to ask you to tell me about it. This way, I might be able to recall some familiar things and recover my memories." Chapter 454. We've only been in the capital for a month or so, and we're guests from another country, so we don't dare to run around. We're only thinking about rescuing Miss, so where would we find the time to inquire about some strange news? What we know is from the vice-envoy's orders. We really don't know anything else. Miss, your body is not well yet. This servant will wait for you to drink some soup and rest. We'll be leaving the city in a bit. Pangui lifted a corner of the curtain and waved his hand at a mute girl who was following silently outside. That mute girl respectfully brought in the box with the soup in her arms. Ningshu had many doubts. Originally, she did not plan on drinking the soup. But when the wooden box was opened and she smelled the sweet fragrance, she couldn't help but take a tentative sip. Because the fragrance was strangely familiar. It was like when she was a child, she really acted coquettishly in front of her mother, begging her mother to make her a bowl of sweet soup. Mother, I want to drink the sweet soup you made. Just one sip and I'll be fine." Her mother held her in her arms and rocked her gently. She kissed her forehead and comforted in a soft voice, Good. You little greedy cat, mother will make it for you. My little greedy cat, you have to get better quickly after drinking the soup." Pangue's voice seemed to have some kind of magic. Combined with her burning eyes, they formed 2 bottomless black holes. Her eyes blurred and her mind and soul were unconsciously sucked in. This is Miss's favorite sweet soup. Ever since Miss and Furan were separated, Furan has been cooking this soup every day. When the soup is cold, she will cook it again. When it's done, she will put it there and watch it gradually cool down. Day after day, year after year. Everyone in the Fu knows how to make this soup. Fourth miss, Furan is waiting at home for you to return. Ningshu's expression was dazed. Mother is waiting for me. Pangue's hand floated in front of her eyes. His voice was slow and deep. Yes, you're sleepy now. Close your eyes and sleep for a while. You'll see Furan soon. Her eyes slowly closed. Ningshu sank back into chaos. When Pangui saw this, he exchanged glances with the mute girl and exhaled at the same time. Putting the bowl of soup back into the wooden box, Pangui said, "Young miss is too clever. She caught me a few times. Fortunately, I have this bowl of soup. We have passed this hurdle. In the future, we have to be more careful. At the very least, We have to endure until we leave the Great Yu domain. The mute girl looked at Ning Shu anxiously, as if she had thousands of words to say, but she forced them down and pointed at herself. Pan Gui shook his head and said, "Better let me do it. You continue to stand guard outside. I'm afraid that your willpower isn't firm and instead spoil Madam's important matter. Don't worry, I'm here. I won't let anything happen to her." The long convoy finally arrived at the city gates. Xiao Yuni pulled the reins and stopped the horses. Deputy Envoy Tuoba Han said with a smile, "Thank you, Sixth Prince, for sending us all the way here on behalf of your country's monarch. The city gates are right in front. Even if you send us off for 1,000 miles, we still have to part. Sixth Prince, please stop. If Sixth Prince has the chance to visit my southern Yang in the future, this envoy will definitely welcome you." Xiao Yuni nodded politely. Envoy Tuoba is too polite. This time, I'm bringing my Great Yu's princess back to the country through marriage. What I'm bringing back is not only my royal father's precious pearl, but also my Great Yu's 10,000 years of friendship. Please be sure to tell your country's monarch to treat the princess well. This prince is extremely grateful. Ha ha ha, of course. It's my southern Yang's fortune to have this pearl. How can we wait? Sixth Prince, don't worry. It's getting late. We have to hurry on our way. Farewell, Your Highness. Tuoba Han waved his arm and the long convoy set off again, slowly driving out of the capital. The person sitting in the red carriage with red paint and red silk silently shed 2 streams of hot tears through the red veil in front of her. She solemnly bid farewell to Xiao Yuni, and from now on, she would be separated from her homeland. Xiao Yuni sat on the horse and watched the convoy pass by one, sending them off with his eyes. Beside him, the guard with a golden mask said softly, "Your Highness, His Majesty's mission has been completed. I'll escort you back to your residence." A crack finally appeared on Xiao Yuni's zombie-like face, revealing the red flesh inside. The red veins in his eyes floated up one by one, the veins on the back of his hand swelled up one by one, almost bursting. Something like that happened to her, but I couldn't even go and visit her immediately. Instead, I'm still here fulfilling the so-called Emperor's orders. You want me to go back to my residence now? Do you want me to not even see her for the last time? I've said too much. Please punish me, Your Highness. Xiao Yuni raised his head and looked at the blue sky, his voice like a knife cutting into his heart. In the past, I always blamed her for not giving me a chance. I even dared to swear with my life. Why couldn't she believe me just once and believe that I was sincere to her? Only now did I know the reason. Her understanding of me was far too deep. The words weighing the pros and cons had long been carved into my bones. Even if I didn't like Imperial Father's marriage, I wouldn't reject it on the spot. That was because the eldest princess's bloodline was extremely important to me in obtaining the throne. Even if I was in so much pain when I heard the news of her death and wanted to rush over to see her immediately, I still accepted Father's order with a smile. Because that was the trust Father had for his favorite son. Ambition and shrewdness, hypocrisy and ruthlessness. These 4 words are really the best description that God has for me. In this life, I'm destined not to be worthy of her. The guard was even more terrified and his knees hit the ground. Your Highness, you can't be so self-deprecating. He slowly looked away and exhaled a long and trembling breath. Get up. She won't be able to hear you anymore. Come with me to the Duke's residence. I want to see her for the last time. He turned his horse around and brushed past the last carriage that had fallen behind the caravan. As they brushed past each other, a gust of wind suddenly appeared out of nowhere and gently lifted a corner of the carriage's curtains. A strange feeling flashed past Xiao Yuni's heart and he instinctively stretched out his arm. Wait. Chapter 455. Tuoba Han, who had been riding at the front, turned his horse around when he heard the report. Sixth Prince, what is it? Xiao Yuni pointed his horsewhip at the last carriage that was too quiet. I heard from the officials of the Ministry of Rights that the envoys from your country exchanged treasures with the two countries. Including the princess's dowry, there should be a total of 36 carriages. Where did the 37th carriage come from and who is sitting inside? The vice-envoy, Tuoba Han, glanced and said carelessly, that is the fourth miss of our southern Yang silk merchants Bayou family. Her father and I are close friends, so when he came back this time, he asked me to bring her back. Because it is not official business, I did not report it. Why, does Sixth Prince think there is something wrong with her? If Sixth Prince is worried, you can check it. However, this child has a hard life and met with misfortune. She is injured and cannot come out to meet guests. I will have to trouble Sixth Prince to board the carriage and take a look. Xiao Yuni glanced at Tuoba Han's careless expression and went forward to lift the corner of the curtain with his horsewhip. The mute girl's fingers immediately tightened. Fortunately, she worried too much. Because they were already prepared, the curtains of this carriage were specially chosen to be dark. Even though the sun was shining brightly outside and the sky was blue, the interior of the carriage was still a little dim. In addition, the face of the woman dressed in Southern Swallow's clothing was wrapped in layers of cloth, with specks of blood on it, making it impossible to see her face clearly. He could only feel that she was pitifully injured, which made Xiao Yuni feel a sharp pain in his heart. He thought of how painful it must have been when Ning Shu was hit by the explosion. The pain in that moment made him not want to investigate the identity of this woman. He put down the curtain and waved his hand. Sorry to disturb you. Take care, Vice-Envoy. Tuoba Han cupped his fists and said goodbye to him again. The mute girl and Pangui exhaled at the same time. They quickly lowered their heads and continued to follow the carriage in the direction away from the capital, moving further and further away from the flashy imperial city. In the other direction, in the western suburbs, among the crying crowd that was preparing to return home with the coffin, under the tall camphor tree, Xiahou Qing's heart suddenly jumped. He clenched his hands into fists and coughed violently. Young master. Hui Mo immediately took out a porcelain bottle from his pocket, took out a pill and handed it to him, but he refused to take it. Hui Mo was so anxious that he stamped his feet. Your Highness, you've spat out blood twice in a short time. If you don't take the medicine, your body won't be able to stand it. Chapter 456. Tian Wen said, this happened just before the procession set off. At that time, Shiziyi was in a hurry to find Lady Ning, so I didn't have time to report this matter. Just as the 13th princess was about to get on the carriage, the 5th princess, Xiao Changyu, suddenly appeared and took the initiative to ask His Majesty to marry in place of Princess Changping. His Majesty was very surprised, but the 5th princess was sincere and kowtowed. If His Majesty didn't agree, she wouldn't get up. His Majesty was moved by her sincerity, so he agreed to her request. Now, calculating the time, the procession should have left the capital from another direction. Shi Yang had always said what he wanted to say and wasn't the least bit courteous. So, could it be that after Princess Changping asked us for help, she was suddenly bewitched by another power and used it to help her escape the marriage without being punished as a bargaining chip to turn her head and deal with us? If that's the case, Princess Changping is too vicious. Shiziyi, let's go to the palace and ask her clearly. Hui Mo was confused and hesitated. Could there be some hidden story? I don't think she's like. Shi Yang's eyes widened. You don't think she's like that? But there's an old saying, you can know a person's face but not his heart. There's another saying, a woman's heart is the most poisonous. In Journey to the West, the white-boned spirit could deceive Tang Sanzang 3 times in a row. How can you be sure that she's not the white-boned spirit? I've said before that beautiful women are the best at lying. Their tears are the most powerful weapons. Hey, you can't have been bewitched by her, right? Shi Yang jumped away in horror. Hui Mo was surrounded by several pairs of eyes. He looked at his Shiziyi's pale face and felt very guilty. He weakly retorted and hid in the corner. No, I didn't, I just... Ari, I won't say any more. When they were besieging Huemore, Xiahou Qing, who had been silent all this time, suddenly moved his eyebrows and opened his mouth to interrupt them. Ahem. Tianwen, Tell me the whole story again, including when Ningshu's carriage left the palace, which route it took, how many times it stopped, who it talked to, etc. Tell me everything. Don't leave out any details. With the heir's orders, Tianwen didn't dare to delay. He hurriedly abandoned Hui Mo and reported all the information he'd found in order from beginning to end. According to the palace's records, this morning, Lady Ning entered the palace at 5:15 in the morning. After that, she stayed in Princess Changping's palace for more than 2 hours before leaving the palace in a carriage at 7:15 in the morning. After that, she went west along Xuanwu Street and passed by Xinfang Terrace, Purple Bamboo Garden, and Qintai Road. At noon, she went out of the city gate and continued west. After that, she went to the tea house we've been to before. There, she rested for a while, said a few words to the owner of the tea house, gave him a tip, and continued on her way. Xiahou Qing listened to every word that Tianwen said and pondered it over in his heart. Immediately, a map of the entire capital appeared in his mind, marking the places that the carriages passed by. Then, his heart trembled, and he suddenly raised his head. Immediately follow me to chase after the entourage of the imperial bride. Shi Yang was shocked. Shizi Yi, what's wrong? Why do you want to chase after He Qin's carriage? He quickly winked at Ju Sai and the others. Oh my god, did Shizi Yi become too sad and his mind became chaotic? Xiahou Qing spoke very quickly. I don't have time to explain now. You only need to know that if I don't chase after them now, I will regret it for the rest of my life. His face was so serious that Ju Sai had only seen it 3 times in more than 10 years. The first time was when he lost his sense of smell and the first blood-red plum blossom grew on the side of his neck. The second time was when he completely lost his sight and handed over all his skills to them and ordered them to continue after his death to find the evil mastermind behind the scenes to comfort his soul in heaven. The third time was now. Therefore, Ju Sai didn't think and immediately sealed Shi Yang's mute acupoint. He brought the horse over to Xiahou Qing and helped him onto the horse. They mounted the horse again and rushed in the direction of another city gate as fast as lightning. Xiahou Qing bent over, causing the originally calm air around him to become a rapid gust of wind. Due to his extreme speed, the black satin in front of him slipped off carelessly. It was stolen by the wind before he grasped it again. Chapter 457. Prince Nanping's mansion has something important to do. Please make way. Hui Mo cracked the whip in the wind and led the way. Hearing the name of the Nanping mansion, the curious passers-by all moved out of the way. They stood on the side of the road and looked up, wanting to see what the legendary Nanping mansion's crown prince looked like. However, before they could see clearly how many eyes and nose the person in the middle had, they felt a gust of wind pass by and the person was gone. Many flower girls felt that it was a pity. Hui Mo whipped the horse again and turned his head while rushing. Prince, do you think Miss Ning is not dead? Holding the brocade firmly in his hand, Xiahou Qing's face was immersed in the flashing lights and passing shadows, which was very clear. The carriage went out of the palace gate and passed by Xuanwu Street, Fangfang Terrace, Qintai Road, and other places. Generally, it was the only way to go west, except for Purple Bamboo Garden. What's wrong with Purple Bamboo Garden? Tianwen suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Ah, I remembered now. That Purple Bamboo Garden was the residence of a great calligrapher from the previous dynasty. Because that great calligrapher's entire residence was exterminated by thieves, there were rumors that the area around the residence was haunted by ghosts. Therefore, the common people would rather take a detour than pass through the entrance. Over time, the garden became deserted and gloomy. Not many people could be seen during the day. Why did Lady Ning go there? Hui Mo said, maybe she had something important to do and didn't have time to think about anything taboo, so she ordered the coachman to take a shortcut. Ju Sai pondered for a moment and said, there is a contradiction. The carriage went from the palace gate to the city gate. If it was hurried, it would have finished in 2 hours. But according to the record, Lady Ning's carriage left the palace at 6:45 in the morning, but it left the city at noon. If it was really hurried, it wouldn't be so leisurely. Huemore suddenly understood. You mean, the extra moment was delayed in the purple bamboo garden? Could it be that she had been replaced by someone else? Then who was the person who was killed in the firecracker workshop? Hui Mo's brain was buzzing and he felt that it was not enough. Xiahou Qing's thoughts became clearer and clearer as he sorted them out. It was as if he had smashed an ice mirror in front of him. The blurry leaf finally revealed its essence in front of his eyes, and the veins were clearly visible. This was a trap, a carefully planned trap, all for the sake of stealing her away from him. As the saying goes, concern leads to confusion. The other party had been playing a psychological war from the beginning to the end. From the moment he noticed Ning Xu's disappearance, every step had been perfectly calculated. From Xiao Zhongping to the owner of the tea house, he had constantly thrown out bait one after another, making him too tired to calm down and think. And when he finally found her after a series of twists and turns, he was faced with a premeditated explosion. The huge impact in that instant completely shattered his rationality. By the time she was taken away by the political marriage team without anyone noticing, the matter had already been settled, and she could no longer be found anywhere in the world. As long as he thought of that possibility, Xiahou Qing's chest was blocked, and he was in so much pain that he could not straighten up. In the backlight, his side face was pale and soft, but it was as unshakable as a snowy mountain. No matter who it is, and no matter what the other party's purpose is to steal her away from me, if I don't allow it, no one can take her away from. Ju Sai always planned 10 steps before taking one step. He thought and said, if Lady Ning is really in the political marriage team, we will inevitably have a conflict with the Southern Yang delegation again. To prevent any future trouble, Hui Mo, Shi Yang, you two go back to the prince's mansion to dispatch people quickly. We will shoot arrows and meet on the way. Okay, we promise to complete the task. Shi Yang, let's go. Why don't you speak? Are you mute? Shi Yang had been riding a horse and waving his hand desperately to remind them of his existence, but no one paid attention to him. He burst into tears. Finally, someone remembers me. My mute acupoint is still sealed. It's too difficult for me. Chapter 458. Who is blocking the road ahead? When the group of carriages passed by the Shuli Pavilion, they were suddenly stopped by 2 maidservants. The leader of the first carriage immediately shouted at them. A slender, dark-colored palace dress came out from behind the 2 maidservants. The person's face was covered with a veil. I am Xiao Zhongping. I am here to send off my eldest sister. 13th princess. The guards immediately stopped the carriage and reported a few words to the deputy envoy. Not long after, a dazzling red wedding dress slowly walked out of the carriage. She walked in front of Xiao Zhongping and lifted her veil. The two of them talked in private. When she saw Xiao Changyu, Xiao Zhongping's voice suddenly became unstable. 5th sister, why do you want to marry for me? Did that person come to find you? Xiao Zhongyu smiled faintly as she looked at this little sister of hers who had grown up together with her but couldn't be considered familiar with her. This proud princess who had once been deeply doted on by the emperor had become gentle and indifferent after experiencing so many things. Furthermore, the rare heroic spirit in her forehead seemed to have vanished with the death of a man named Yun Ruohue, leaving behind only a noble and gorgeous empty shell. She said, someone did come to find me, but I was willing. Xiao Zhongping opened her eyes wide in shock. You were willing? As she spoke, her eyes became red. 5th sister, how could you? You should know what this marriage represents. Aren't you afraid that you will regret it in the future? Xiao Changyu gently tidied up her scattered hair. When she smiled, the valiant and formidable 5th Princess Xiao Changyu seemed to come back. In the first 20 years of my life, I loved, hated, resented, and cried. She had given her heart to someone who didn't deserve it, and then dug it back out. Thinking about it, I have experienced half of this world, so I don't regret it. These years, I have made myself a joke. In the following years, I should fulfill some of the obligations of a royal daughter. Little 13th prince, since you were born into the palace, I know that you have not lived well, but as your eldest sister, I have never reached out to help you. I have been too negligent. This time, I will consider it as an apology. Don't worry, your elder sister isn't dead yet. I'll hold them off for you for a few years. The tears in Xiao Zhangping's eyes rolled down. He was speechless. He could only hold her hand tightly and call out, "Sister, don't think that I'm only doing this for you. I'm also doing this for Imperial Father, for Imperial Mother who has always been implicated by me, for the people of Great Yu, and for the people of Xiao Changyu, who will be recorded in the history books 100 years later, not just as an idiot who only knows how to love." Xiao Changyu put the veil back on her head and waved at her. Little 13, choose someone who also cares about you and love him. Don't follow my old path. Remember to turn back when you hit the southern wall. In Xiao Zhangping's eyes, the beautiful red wedding dress danced in the wind. She boarded the carriage again and was taken away by the rolling wheels, further and further away. She pressed down hard on her chest and sobbed, "Okay. I'll turn back. Elder sister, I'll definitely do as you say." She was dreaming again. It was that man who was covered in black brocade. He looked like a celestial being who was about to melt into snow. However, this time, he was not standing under the camphor tree. Instead, he was riding on a horse. He looked anxious and travel-worn. Fine beads of sweat rolled down from his forehead and condensed on his chin. They followed the curve of his chin and slowly slid down to his Adam's apple, leaving behind a wet trail. Finally, they disappeared into his collar. On the side of his neck that was covered by his collar, a blood-red color was faintly discernible. It seemed to be in the shape of a flower petal. Ning Shu looked back and forth beside him. She was very curious. Who was this person? Why did he always appear in her dreams? Could it be that it was a love debt she had previously incurred? That feeling was good. He was so handsome and did not seem to be lacking in money. This kind of love debt, the more the better. But why was it that every time she dreamed of him, her heart would feel both happy and sad, causing her soul to feel uneasy? She wished she could immediately turn into a gust of wind and float to his side like a butterfly. Of course, she did not have the ability to turn into a butterfly. As a result, she woke up again and saw the mute girl kneeling beside her, washing her body and wiping her face. Chapter 459. Have we already left the capital? She didn't know why, but she felt an unusual pain in her forehead. She was also trapped in a faint dizziness. It was like a legendary illusion. The mute girl nodded. What time is it now? The mute girl gestured that it was sunset and they should get out of the carriage to rest. Ning Shu looked around and found that they were no longer in the carriage. They were surrounded by low tables, soft couches, and small windows. Under the window, there was a pottery vase with a bunch of dogtail flowers. Although it was not very gorgeous, it was neat. It must be a relay station. The sun was hanging in the west outside. Ning Shu pressed her temple and said in pain, "My head hurts. Can you help me out to get some air?" The mute girl hurriedly shook her head, indicating that her body was still weak and needed to rest. It was not suitable for her to go out. Ning Shu disappointedly pursed her lips, "So it's like this. Okay, my stomach is very hungry right now. Can I trouble you to prepare some food for me?" The mute girl nodded again and again. She got off the couch and turned to leave, but she heard Ning Shu let out a painful cry. She was very nervous and quickly went to see. But she saw Ning Shu laugh out loud, "I'm just teasing you. I feel very good right now. There is nothing wrong." The mute girl silently looked at her, but in the end, she couldn't do anything to her. Thinking about it, she was still worried about the injury on her forehead. So, she bent over to check it again and again. Looking at the mute girl's focused eyes, Ning Shu's heart moved. She suddenly said, "I don't know why, but I feel that you are very familiar. It seems like you have been by my side for a long time. Is that right?" The mute girl's movements froze. She subconsciously withdrew her hand and shook her head. Ning Shu tilted her head and seriously said, "Then we are especially fated to meet. So, when we meet, we feel very intimate." The mute girl raised her eyes as if she had thousands of words to say. But, she only flashed her eyes and turned her head. She turned around and ran to get her food. When the door closed again, Ning Shu put away the harmless smile on her face. Her eyes became as cold as ice, without a trace of ripple. She turned her wrist and something slipped out of her sleeve. It was the fire pellet she had taken from the mute girl's body. According to Pan Gui, they were the servant girls of the Baiyu family, a silk merchant of the southern Yang kingdom, who had been missing for many years. But why would an ordinary maidservant carry such a powerful thing on her? Furthermore, the identity they gave her was White Jade Linlang. She had been abducted and sold to a brothel when she was only a few years old. But why did she think that she knew nothing about the essential skills of a brothel's courtesan? Peeper, dance, singing? She knew nothing about them, and she was even better at seducing men. Only the ancient zither still had 1 or 2 pieces of rusty melody left. It was difficult for it to enter the Hall of Elegance. It was even more wishful thinking to rely on it to make money. Things like memories could be lost, but physical skills should be engraved into the muscle memory. How could it be easily forgotten? Unless this so-called identity of the 4th young mistress was fake. But what was their object in making up this story to deceive her? On the way, she could see that no matter if it was Pan Gui or the mute girl, they didn't have any killing intent towards her. Especially the mute girl. Her eyes couldn't deceive people. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to steal the fire pellet so easily. Putting away the fire pellet, Ning Shu got up from the couch and walked to the dressing table. She slowly removed the white bandage on her face and then lowered her head. As expected, there wasn't a scar on her face. There was only a small bruise on her forehead. But it wasn't a big deal. Her eyes became cold and solemn. Southern Yang's diplomatic group, and her personal team. 2 strange maidservants who had martial arts and could even master illusions. For now, she had to figure it out as soon as possible. Who was she? Chapter 460. The relay station was completely surrounded by the Hachin caravan and there were soldiers guarding outside. Ning Shu looked around and confirmed that she could not find any chance to escape. The current situation was unclear and she was not even sure of her own identity. Even if she escaped, she did not know where to go. The best choice now was to bide her time and act according to the situation. She was thinking about where she could find some useful words or clues when the door opened with a creak. She immediately lay back on the bed and continued to pretend to sleep. It was not Pan Gui or the mute girl, but a middle-aged man with a strong and rough appearance and greedy eyes. It was the Southern Yang deputy envoy, Tuoba Han. He stood with his hands behind his back, protruding his stomach, squinting his snake-like eyes, taking leisurely steps towards Ning Shu. Looking at the soft young girl on the couch, the muscles on Tuoba Han's face twitched as he slowly smiled. "You're such a sharp-tongued little girl. You didn't expect that there would be a day when you would fall into my hands, right? That day, you refuted me in front of everyone in the Zichen Palace Hall, causing me to lose a lot of face. Now, you have to rely on me to escape. Let me see what you're going to spit out from that sharp little mouth of yours." On the bed, Ning Shu felt a strong sense of disgust rise in her heart. She calmly pinched the fireball in her sleeve, but her face was calm as if she had really fallen asleep. But this little trick was too ordinary in Tuoba Han's eyes. He approached the edge of the bed, bent down, and pinched her chin. Pretending to be asleep. Ha ha, tricks. Ning Shu woke up from her dream. Her face was pale as she screamed. Like a frightened rabbit, she hid in the innermost part of the bed and hugged herself in fear. She looked at the unfamiliar poisonous snake in front of her. "You, who are you? Why are you in my room? Are you the procuress who came to take me back? Don't come over, Pan Gui. Mute girl. Come and save me. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back." Looking at the pure white eyes of the young girl in front of him, Tuoba Han raised his eyebrows with interest. He suddenly laughed. "Oh, I almost forgot. You shouldn't remember anything. Ha ha ha, my good niece, let me tell you, I am your good uncle, your father's close friend for many years. Ever since I was your uncle, I have doted on you the most. Quickly get close to your uncle. In any case, she had worked in a brothel before. Who didn't she serve? Keep the goodies within the family. What are you doing? Let me go. Ning Shu didn't even bother to put on her shoes. She ran toward the door as if she was escaping, scattering a handful of things. Tuoba Han broke into a run and chased after her. Just as his iron palms were about to grab her, he stepped on a few pearls and almost fell down. Chapter 461. Ning Shu's heart tightened. Does Princess recognize me? She had just grasped Xiao Changyue's hand when Pangui suddenly appeared from behind and pulled her behind him, looking warily at Xiao Changyu. Newbie is here, don't worry, miss. Vice Envoy Tuoba, what do you intend to do? The mute girl's sleeve slid and a soft whip came out. Seeing Pangui and the mute girl return to their positions at the same time, the flesh on Tuoba Han's face trembled. He took back his claws that were about to reach over and straightened his back. From a ferocious beast, he turned back into half a human. He said with a fake smile, "Ha ha, what can Ben envoys want? I just went to see how my good niece is recovering and did my duty as her uncle. Who knew that this child injured her head and forgot everything? Now, there was a big misunderstanding. Ha 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 ha, I've disturbed Princess. It's fine, everyone can leave." He gave a dignified excuse and everyone gradually left. Only Ning Shu looked anxiously at Xiao Changyu. But Pangui and the mute girl were at her side so she could only be escorted back to her room. Seeing the bandages on her face loosen, Pangui and the mute girl exchanged a look and knelt on the ground. Miss was frightened today. It's Newbie's fault, please punish us. Ning Shu held their hands tightly, her eyes filled with water. You can't leave me alone in the future. I don't know anyone here. I was really scared just now. The mute girl's eyes turned red, anger rising. She took the soft whip and was about to go out and argue with Tuoba Han when she was stopped by Pangui. Pangui shook his head at her and then comforted Ning Shu. Miss, your body is weak. Newbie will serve you some food first. Don't worry, even if Newbie dies in the future, we won't leave you alone. All right, I'll remember. You can't go back on your words. Ning Shu nodded gratefully. She sat at the small table and ate some warm porridge and side dishes under the two's service. Pangui observed her expression as he served the dishes. Seeing that she was really hungry, she ate half a bowl in front of them without any ill feelings. She didn't seem to be on guard at all, so he probed. This servant heard the noise and rushed over just now. I just happened to see Miss saying something to Her Highness the Princess. What was it? Ning Shu didn't even think. Oh, that princess saw me and said in shock, "Why is it you?" I was puzzled and asked her, "Do you know me?" Before she could answer, you guys had already rushed over. Tell me, did she know me in the past? But I am a brothel girl, how did I interact with the princess? Don't you think this is strange? Just now, Pangui had been so close to her and interrupted her conversation with the princess. This meant that she had heard everything. If she hid it now, she would be deceiving herself. She might as well tell the whole story and fish in troubled waters. As expected, although Pangui's expression tightened, his brows loosened imperceptibly. She smiled slightly and said, "Miss, how can you belittle yourself? Although you have unfortunately fallen into prostitution, you have always been a prostitute who only sells her art and not her body. Also, you have been outstanding since young and are well known in the capital. That princess must have been curious and went to see you in disguise. Newbie heard in the capital that this fifth princess doesn't care about trifles and the people have an unusual reputation. So it's like this." Ning Shu understood. No wonder. But it is good that the princess is here today. Otherwise, who knows what that vice envoy Tuoba would do. My father sees this kind of person as a close friend and entrusted me to him. He is really blinded by wolves. When I see my father, I will tell him about this. By the way, I should pay a visit to the fifth princess some other day. Pangui thought for a while and stood up. "Miss, you don't need to come out." Newbie will thank her on your behalf. You just need to rest well. Leave everything to Newbie. Mute girl, serve forth miss. I will be back soon. The mute girl nodded silently and took the silver chopsticks. Ning Shu smiled sweetly at her and continued to eat happily. Before Pangui left, she suddenly said, "Oh right, miss, the mute girl lost something very important. It is a black ball. That thing is very powerful. Did miss pick it up?" Ning Shu's wrist moved and she stared blankly. "What black ball? I didn't see it." Pangui showed a distressed expression. The mute girl checked from the carriage and it was still there. After that, she only went to 2 places. The way to the kitchen was searched. You didn't see it, so where could she go? That is the amulet madam gave us to protect miss before we left. Ning Shu also became nervous. Ah, it's that important. I'll look for it with you. The 3 of them searched the room inch by inch but couldn't find it. Ning Shu bent down and saw a round little thing under the bed. She pointed and said, "Isn't that the black ball you were talking about?" "Yes, that's it. Mute girl, you have to keep it this time. You can't lose it again. Otherwise, master and madam will skin you when we go back." Pangue's eyes turned. "Miss, your clothes are dirty. Newbie will go to the carriage and get a set of clean clothes for you to change into." "Miss, please wait a moment." Ning Shu curved her eyes and said innocently, "Okay." Pangui was all smiles as he pushed open the door and walked out. The moment the door closed, Ning Shu, who was drinking porridge, and Pangui, who was outside the door, stopped smiling. Their eyes were deep and unfathomable. Chapter 462. There was a small river behind the relay station. The trees beside the river were lush, and there was no moon or stars. Under the shadow of the trees, Pangui lowered his voice and said, "Deputy Tuoba, don't forget the agreement you made with my madam. My lady has evidence of your affair with someone else. If it weren't for the deputy envoy adding fuel to the fire, how could the envoy have fallen in love with Xuanfang Station, which had a huge dispute with him, and lost his life at the last farewell banquet? In the future, Deputy will have lost one of your greatest rivals in the Southern Yang Imperial Court. You've worked so hard to achieve this, so don't ruin it all in one day." Tuoba Han was enraged. "How dare you? Are you threatening me? Don't forget, who are you relying on to leave the Great Yu's territory? Of course, we need to rely on Deputy." Pangui smiled and raised his head. Under the shadow of the lamp, his eyes shone with a layer of silver blue. He looked at Tuoba Han and said softly, "I'm just a little maid, how can I have the guts to threaten you? I'm just giving advice. After all, what is more important than your great future? Is it because of a moment of anger, 1,000 li dike can be destroyed by an ant hole? Or is it because of your future career, wealth and glory? Deputy, think carefully. You." Tuoba Han was about to explode in anger, but after falling into the abyss of those eyes, his emotions were unconsciously trapped, and he could not move his gaze away. His expression was absent-minded, and he said unconsciously, "It's good that you know yourself. As for other things, I don't need a lowly maid to remind me. It's late, I should go rest." Pangui smiled and said, "Deputy Envoy must be tired from the journey, you should rest well. When you wake up, you will forget all the unpleasant things that happened today. Deputy Envoy, this way, let this servant send you off." Under Pangui's soft and ethereal voice, Tuoba Han yawned, slowly walking back to the relay station like a marionette, and went up the stairs. After sending away this plague, Pangui withdrew his smile and turned around, meeting the astonished eyes of 5th Princess Xiao Zhongyu, who was 100 feet away. "Who are you exactly? What kind of move did you just use?" Pangui said blankly, "What is your highness talking about? How come this servant doesn't understand at all? Don't come any closer." Xiao Changyu retreated a few steps, and the accompanying palace maids immediately stood in front of her to protect her. "I saw everything just now. The deputy envoy was originally very angry, but when she saw your eyes and heard your strange voice, she suddenly seemed to change into a different person and left like a puppet. If this wasn't sorcery, then what was it? Also, when I saw Ning Shu just now, her expression was blank, as if she didn't remember me at all. Her series of actions were completely unlike the meticulous Ning Shu. It was as if he had been forcefully transformed into another person. Speak. Who are you people? What do you want to do to her? Xiao Changyu hurriedly got married and didn't know that Ning Shu had been blown to death. He only thought that she had been plotted against. She waved her hand and the guards who were escorting the marriage immediately surrounded them. Pan Gui was about to go forward when he found that he was surrounded. The mute girl was guarding Ning Shu at the edge of the couch. Just as she was taking a nap, she suddenly heard a commotion downstairs. Ning Shu woke her up and said worriedly, "Mute girl, something seems to have happened downstairs. Could it be that the deputy envoy is acting up again? He didn't catch me just now, so now he's going to harm Pan Gui? Let's go take a look." The mute girl immediately stood up. After thinking, she tidied her clothes and made sure that she wasn't messy at all. She turned to open the door, but she didn't expect to feel a gust of wind from the back of her neck. She instinctively lashed out with her whip, but she didn't expect to see Ning Shu's cold eyes. She withdrew her whip and fainted softly. Ning Shu withdrew her hand blade and supported the mute girl's falling body, dragging her onto the soft couch. Just an hour ago, before Tuoba broke in, she was standing in front of the mirror and planning her next response. She had an idea and tore a small piece of cloth from the white bandage. She bit her finger and wrote a red save character on it, just in case. Then she suddenly heard a series of unfamiliar footsteps outside the room. The footsteps were very heavy and the strides were very large. She could tell that it was a tall and sturdy man. Therefore, she had an idea and tore off a few hanging bead curtains on the bed curtain as a small hidden weapon to deal with the unexpected. When Tuoba had said those offensive words, she had indeed considered whether or not she should kill him directly. However, she did not know who this person was or what his intentions were. If she killed him directly, there would be no end to the disaster that would befall her. Secondly, if she used that fireball, Pan Gui and the deputy envoy would know what she was thinking and increase their vigilance. She would be in a passive position again. Thirdly, the current situation wasn't clear. If she took the chance to stir up the pond water and make a big fuss, there might be unexpected consequences. The result made her very happy. She didn't expect that the deputy envoy would recognize her identity. However, before she could ask the result, Pan Gui rushed back in time and interrupted their conversation. She had no other choice. She could only wave her sleeve when the two weren't paying attention and throw that small piece of cloth at the fifth princess's feet. And when the fifth princess saw the bloody words on that piece of cloth, she would definitely take action. As expected, she gambled correctly. Chapter 463. May Your Highness the Princess be well. Walking down the stairs to the princess, Ning Shu's orchid grass drooped slightly as she curtsied in greeting. Xiao Changyu was sitting in front of the stone table, resting her chin on her hand as she sipped tea. Seeing her, she half opened her eyes and said lazily, "It's you. Why have you come to see this princess?" Her jade finger pointed lightly, casually pointing at Pan Gui who was gagged in the corner by the guards. "Is it for your servant girl? Or is it to kowtow to Ben Gong and ask for forgiveness?" Ning Shu looked at Pan Gui and said in a tone that was neither servile nor overbearing, "Your Highness the Princess is talented and intelligent, and outsmarts Ban Shuwanji. This girl will not beat around the bush with Princess. This girl has something to ask Princess. Does Your Highness know this girl?" Xiao Changyu seemed to have heard something funny and laughed coldly. "Are you showing off? Are you trying to show off how famous you are, and how famous you are? In our Jing city, there may be many people who have not seen Ben Gong, but there are only a few who have not heard of your great name. You are very daring. Don't think that Ben Gong will always tolerate you." Catching the deep hostility in the princess's tone, Ning Shu frowned and continued to ask for advice. "So, Princess really does know this girl?" "To tell you the truth, my daughter suffered some injuries earlier and has forgotten many things of the past. I can't even remember my own name. Princess, Please don't be stingy and enlighten me. Who exactly is my daughter? Forgot. Xiao Changyu raised an eyebrow and raised her voice. You really forgot? When she saw the pure and sincere expression on Ning Shu's face, Xiao Zhongyu laughed heartily. She was both angry and happy. You caused this consort to be in such a miserable state, but I didn't think that you would actually forget all about it. Who are you? You are good, you are great. Ning Shu's brows furrowed even tighter as she listened to her continue. If it weren't for you, this consort would have already married her sweetheart and grown old together. However, just because he accidentally saw you perform at Admiring Moon Pavilion once, he threw all his heart on you as if he was possessed and completely abandoned this consort. I am a dignified princess, but I have been reduced to the laughingstock of the streets and alleys. I have no choice but to take the initiative to accept the fate of a political marriage. Do you think I should recognize you? But at least the heavens have eyes. They can't bear to see you continue to bring disaster to the world, so they ruthlessly punished you. How satisfying. Xiao Changyu got up and walked step by step towards Ning Shu. If Ben Gong had known in advance that the young daughter of an old friend that had been left behind by the deputy envoy was you, Ben Gong definitely wouldn't have allowed you to travel with the group. Now that we've already exposed each other, this consort can't allow you to wander around in front of my eyes, giving face to the deputy envoy. Come, give her a semicursive letter. You can leave on your own. If you dare to appear in front of this consort again, this consort will definitely take revenge for that day. A cold-faced guard threw the semicursive letter in front of Ning Shu and then threw Pan Gui at her feet. Pan Gui's face was covered in tears as he explained to Ning Shu, Young miss, I followed your orders and specially went to get our Southern Yang's rare specialties to give to Her Highness the Princess. I didn't expect that when I opened the door, I would be caught by the princess's guards. Young miss, we should hurry and leave. Her Highness the Princess has a noble status. Even if she is vicious and merciless to kill us, we won't be able to resist. Several guards surrounded them and forcefully pushed them to the front of the carriage. Even the unconscious mute girl upstairs was pulled down and stuffed into the carriage. Ning Shu had nowhere to go. She could only leave with Pan Gui, the mute girl and an old uncle who was in charge of driving the carriage under the princess's banishment. Pan Gui shed tears and blamed himself. Young miss, there is something that Pan Gui wants to confess to you. Actually, your face doesn't have any injuries. I purposely wrapped those strips of cloth around you because I know the grudges between you and Her Highness the Princess. If she recognizes you, there will be no place for us. So I acted on my own and was afraid that you would be frightened after knowing the truth. So I lied to you. I thought she wouldn't be able to recognize you after wrapping your face with the strips of cloth. I didn't expect that she still recognized you. It's all Pan Gui's fault. Ning Shu helped her up. I was too suspicious and didn't trust you all. So I had many conjectures and blamed you all wrongly. I hope you all don't take it to heart. Protecting young miss is our responsibility. Don't worry, as long as we servants still have a breath, we will send you safely out of Great Yu. Looking at the mute girl who was still unconscious, Ning Shu couldn't help but feel guilty. But at the same time, an even bigger and more vague suspicion rose in her heart. It was as if she was wrapped in a ball of grey cotton. She clearly felt suspicions all around, but when she reached out to touch it, it was soft and she couldn't exert strength. This feeling of helplessness made her very tired. Maybe, the truth was as they said, she had been too suspicious. But how to explain the scenes in the dream? Who was the Shua they kept calling out to? Who was it? When she closed her eyes in deep thought, she didn't notice that Pan Gui beside her silently lifted a corner of the carriage curtain. He looked towards Xiao Changyu who was standing under the lights on the second floor of the relay station in the distance and gave a solemn and grateful gaze. What she didn't know was that in the time it took for an incense stick to burn after she left the relay station in the carriage, Xiao Qing's horse danced with its 4 hooves, stepping on the axle prints left behind by the carriage and stopping in front of the relay station. Xiao Qing's black hair fluttered in the night wind. He didn't have time to stop for a breath and hurriedly walked into the relay station. When she closed her eyes in deep thought, She didn't notice that Pan Gui beside her silently lifted a corner of the carriage curtain and gave a solemn and grateful gaze towards Xiao Changyu, who was standing under the lights on the second floor of the relay station in the distance. Chapter 464. Xiao Changyu, who had been woken up by the guards, walked out of the room unhappily. Looking at Xiaoho Qing, who was dressed in black, he suppressed his annoyance. What brings Xiaoho Shizi here so late at night? You shouldn't be here to see me off. I remember that this princess has no friendship with Xiaoho Shizi. Xiaoho Qing opened his pale lips and bluntly said a name. Ning Shu. If you want to find her, go find her yourself. Why are you asking me? Could it be that you're saying that eldest Miss Ning is in my group? Xiao Changyu laughed involuntarily. Xiaoho Shizi is really in a good mood. You came all the way from the capital and traveled dozens of miles just to tell me a joke that isn't funny. In this deep night, Xiaoho Qing's voice was hoarse from exhaustion, but his tone was tense and solemn. I didn't mean to joke with Princess. Ning Shu is missing. She was kidnapped by someone using the scheme of replacing a flower with a tree. Not long after she went missing, Princess's entourage left the capital. According to my guards, Princess's entourage and the Southern Yang diplomatic mission reported to the Ministry of Revenue that there should be 36 carriages, but in reality, 37 carriages left the capital. Princess, please tell me honestly where Ning Shu is. 37 carriages? Xiao Changyu frowned in confusion. He asked the people around him and soon received a response. A young girl dressed in foreign clothing and her 2 servant girls were brought forward. Are you talking about her? She is Baiyu Linlang, the youngest daughter of a silk merchant from the Southern Yang. The deputy envoy and her father are close friends, so he asked me to bring her back on the way. I found her yesterday, so I didn't have time to inform the Ministry of Revenue. This is pardonable. Xiaoho Shizi, don't you think so? Xiao Zhengyu's attitude was magnanimous. Furthermore, I have no enmity with that Ning Shu. I really can't think of a reason to harm her, so why should I hide her? If the crown prince is still suspicious, you can search everywhere. Everyone in my entourage is in the relay station. If you can find them, I will let the crown prince bring them back. Your Highness, should we search? Hui Mo whispered. He was also having a headache about the current situation. The Southern Yang envoys were not to be trifled with. With the addition of the 5th princess, who was the favorite of the emperor, the effect of these 2 troubles was more than doubled. Therefore, regardless of whether they found it or not, there was only one word to describe the result: troublesome. However, he still hoped to find Lady Ning as soon as possible. Otherwise, he was worried that his master would not be able to hold on. He looked worriedly at Xiaoho Qing. Just when they were confronting each other, Ju Sai came in from outside and reported, Your Highness, there are 2 fresh ruts at the gate of the relay station. The traces are very intact. It seems that they just left not long before we arrived. Continue to the west. Xiao Changyue's eyes flickered. He frowned and said, Guards, did someone leave the relay station just now? Why didn't I know? A Yamen runner stepped forward and said, reporting to the princess, no one has left the relay station. It's just that an hour ago, an old man arrived at the relay station with his entire family. He said that his wife was not feeling well and had not found a place to rest along the way, so he wanted to rest at our relay station for the night. However, the relay station is an important place and has never taken in commoners. Moreover, Your Highness is here, so it is not safe for Your Highness to stay here. Therefore, I gave them some medicine and urged them to leave. Your Highness is resting, so I don't want to disturb Your Highness with such trivial matters. Xiao Changyu nodded in understanding. I see. Do you have any questions? I will answer them for you. Chapter 465. After a moment of silence, Xiaoho Qing frowned deeply. He raised his sleeves and bowed to the front, saying in a hoarse voice, I'm sorry to intrude on the courier station late at night. Please forgive me, Your Highness. After leaving Southern Yang, The mountains are high and the rivers are long. I deeply admire your highness' righteousness. I wish your highness a smooth journey. Xiahou Qing will take his leave. Wait, Xiao Changyu stopped him. She looked at Xiahou Qing's handsome face that was as white as paper. She moved her lips and showed some sympathy in her eyes. I heard that Xiahou Shizi has been ill for many years. Your complexion doesn't look good now. It's better not to travel late at night. Over the years, the only thing he understood was that some things were destined by the heavens, and separation might be the best arrangement for everyone. 2 months ago, I stopped a car on the street. Ning Shu said to me 5 words, "Don't force anything." Xiahou Qing's footsteps paused. He held the half-shattered jade pendant of the abyss swimming fish in his hand. A thin bloody mark had been cut out of his palm by the sharp edge. He opened his mouth and said, "How did your highness answer at that time?" Xiao Changyue's eyes shrank. In the end, she didn't say anything to stop his footsteps. Because she deeply remembered her answer at that time was, "But what if I insist on forcing it?" Only absent-mindedness can be unrestrained. If you really care about someone, how can you really let go easily? Even if she were to go back to 2 months ago and stop her, would she really be able to stop her? She knew the answer and so did he. Coming out of the courier station, Hui Mo was burning with anxiety. "Shiziyi, are we just going to leave like this? Are we not going to search? What if this is an empty fort stratagem, and eldest Miss Ning is hiding in here?" Xiahou Qing shook his head. His throat bulged and the coughing that he had been suppressing along the way rushed out violently. His footsteps were weak and he couldn't help but bend down. Huemore Juicy was extremely anxious and hurriedly patted his back. Just as he was thinking about how to persuade him to take the medicine, Xiahou Qing took the initiative to stretch out his hand and said, "Give me the medicine and let me take it." Hui Mo was stunned. He was so excited that he quickly took out the medicine bottle and water bag and helped him to drink it. Because of the violent coughing, his face was abnormally red, but his lips were even paler. After taking the medicine, he casually waved his hand to indicate that he was fine and answered Hui Mo's question, "There is no need to search. She is not in the station." The 5th princess obviously came prepared. "She will never let us find anything." "What do you mean?" When a person wakes up from a dream, especially when they are woken up by someone, their thoughts will be much more chaotic than when they are awake. Their reactions will be slower, their temper will also be more irritable, and their breathing will also be much heavier than that of a normal person. But just now, although the 5th princess deliberately imitated her temper, her breathing did not deceive my ears. Moreover, she was very logical from the beginning to the end. The process from questioning to asking one person after another was extremely smooth. There was no hesitation and there was no trace of hesitation. Obviously, she was prepared, wasn't she? In fact, there was no problem with the series of words that followed. But when she persuaded me at the beginning, she couldn't help but reveal a trace of flaw. According to her, she didn't know what happened to Ning Shu. Maybe she was in danger, maybe she was plotted against. Everything was unknown. But she persuaded me not to force it. It seemed that she was sure that Ning Shu was safe and there was no danger. So, we don't need to waste time in the courier station. She must know the whereabouts of Ning Shu. It is even very likely that she sent her away in person. Chapter 466. He didn't understand why it seemed like everyone was an accomplice, conspiring to steal her away from him. However, he would definitely find her with his own hands and pull her back into his arms again. Even if he had to be the enemy of the whole world, so what? On a moonless night, the river of stars also disappeared. A few muffled sounds came from the horizon. Ju Sai looked up at the sky and frowned. Heir apparent, it's going to rain soon. Let's find a place to hide from the rain. However, he heard Xiahou Qing shake his head resolutely and step onto the back of the horse again. The hazy light outlined the curve of his face. With one stroke, he said resolutely, the rain will wash away the tracks left by the carriage. Therefore, not only can we not stop, we have to go faster, faster. In the pitch-black night, The road ahead seemed to be shrouded in black fog. Only the glass lamp hanging by the saddle gave off a faint glow, illuminating a small part of the unknown road ahead. The immortal looked down from the ninth heaven. Those faint lights were like persistent moths, stubbornly rushing toward their fate. Even if the road ahead was unknown, even if they had to go through water and tread on fire. The immortal laughed mockingly and waved his sleeves. Soon, a torrential downpour fell mercilessly, extinguishing the last flickering flame. In the heavy rain, the old man driving the carriage wiped the rainwater off his face and shouted into the carriage, "Miss, the rain is too heavy. All the lights have been extinguished. We can't see the road ahead. Let's find a place to rest." Ning Shu, who had just taken a nap, was woken up by the pitter-patter of the rain. She looked at the pouring rain outside and said, "The rain is so heavy and the road is slippery in the dark. It's really not safe. Uncle, please find a place nearby where we can rest and take shelter from the rain." "Okay. Good horse, giddy up." The old man hurried for a while in the heavy rain and saw a ruined temple with flickering candlelight inside. He coaxed the horse to change its path and stopped under a big tree beside the ruined temple. The mute girl took off her clothes and covered Ning Shu's head. The few of them trotted into the bustling ruined temple. There were already many people inside. Most of them were traveling merchants who were used to living in the open. They could find shelter in a ruined temple. There were also a few who hurried in after the rain. Several groups of people gathered together and smiled at each other. Soon, they each found a place to tidy up. Ning Shu, an old man, and 3 young girls, attracted some attention at first, especially the thick bandage on her face. However, the crowd lost interest after looking at her, so they retracted their gazes. The mute Pangui girl secretly observed the surroundings and found a corner where they sat down. She helped Ning Shu wipe her body. The traveling merchants had traveled far and wide, so they were the most familiar with each other. With so many people crammed into a small, dilapidated temple, it was fortunate that they didn't sleep. They got up and chatted with each other to relieve their boredom. The topics they talked about were the most popular topics of the past 2 days. Hey, have you heard? Have you heard? That Prince Ku Xiao Minglan is truly a rare talent that is hard to come by in 1,000 years. Hearing this name, Ning Shu's eyebrows twitched. She vaguely felt that it was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't remember exactly how or why it was so familiar. Another person quickly said, "Quickly tell us, what did that old man do this time? Could it be that there's something more absurd than the time when he stood under the flower pavilion and played music for 3 days and forced the red door to open? Is there anything that old man can't do in this world?" Just this afternoon, he slipped out of His Majesty's state banquet and ran to Shangtaku Mountain, saying that he had seen through the mortal world and wanted to become a monk. The old bald donkey was so scared that he almost met Buddha on the spot. It wasn't easy for him to beg his father and grandmother to persuade him to stop. He turned around and jumped into the Buddha bath pool, saying that he wanted to use the Buddha bath water to wash away the stink of money on his body. In order to save him, the entire Shangtaku Mountain was turned upside down. After a lot of trouble, they finally sent him away. According to the people present, after sending him away, the bald donkey abbot went straight to Buddha and kowtowed 99 times, praying that Buddha would bless him and not let him come again. Ha 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 ha. After that person finished laughing, his expression changed. He rolled his eyes and deliberately mystified. "Make a guess, what happened down there?" In the middle of the night, when one was sleepy, these interesting words could wake one up. What happened? Don't keep us in suspense, quickly tell us. That person lowered his voice and said, just after he left, a fish suddenly jumped out of the Buddha bath pool. It slapped its tail and died. Originally, monks were merciful and wouldn't harm a dead fish. Just when a young novice monk was about to bury the dead fish, he suddenly felt that the fish's stomach was bloated, as if there was something inside. The young novice monk was very curious and opened the fish's mouth to take a look. He saw that the fish's stomach was stuffed with a roll of paper. That paper was very strange, it didn't melt when it came into contact with water. On the front, there was a string of birth characters written in small words. On the back, There were 4 big words written in blood-red cinnabar, female lead Han Wang. Chapter 467. Gasps of shock immediately erupted from the crowd. Many people present might not have heard of the female lead King Han, but the legend of the female lead King Wu when the Tang dynasty's Emperor Wu was young was known to everyone as long as they were not ignorant children. Female Emperor Wu Jiao went against the heavens and usurped the Tang dynasty for the Zhou dynasty. She wantonly massacred the Tang dynasty's imperial family and almost overturned the Li family's dynasty. It became the most unbelievable and heavy stroke in the history books. As for the book in the belly of the fish, it was even more ominous and intended to cause chaos in the imperial court. Now, these 2 mythical stories had appeared in the current dynasty at the same time. What did this imply? It was very likely to cause great chaos. Appreciating the shocked expressions of the audience, the peddler leaned over and chuckled. The more interesting part is yet to come. Do you know who the woman with the surname Han is? She is Prince Ku's biological sister from the same mother, Princess Royal Xiao Mingshue's only legitimate daughter, Princess Herue Han Sijia. It is said that when Princess Royal heard the news, she fainted on the spot. It is unknown if she has woken up yet. Everyone clicked their tongues in wonder and sighed. His Majesty just announced the marriage between Princess Herue and the 6th prince, and then this happened. Now, it's all over. Ning Shu couldn't help but sigh when she heard this. This Prince Ku is really unlucky. If it was someone else who went to Xiangti Mountain to cause trouble, it would be fine. But it was him who went. Even if that Princess Royal hated him, she couldn't complain to His Majesty that it was her biological brother who framed her daughter, his biological niece. If this isn't cheating his sister, then what is? Don't you all think so? The mute girl who was quietly observing the situation on the side nervously squeezed Pangui's hand. Pangui shook his head, indicating for her to calm down and not be impatient. He smiled and said, "Yes, that's why everyone says that this Prince Ku is really ridiculous." Ning Shu smiled and nodded, continuing to listen. Someone in the crowd asked suspiciously, "This just happened in the capital. How did you know?" The man's eyes were half closed and he said, "I won't hide it from old sir. I learned the art of divination from the Taoist priest of the White Crane Temple. I saw that the 5 elements of the city were in chaos recently and there was a murderous aura in the air. Therefore, I pinched my fingers and predicted that something big would happen in the next 3 months. In any case, I'm a merchant and I can do business anywhere. Therefore, I packed my bags and ran out. You just came from the capital. Is there anything else new? Let's talk about it. We're all very tired." He slowly sipped his tea and put on airs before shaking his head and saying, "All right, all right, all right. Let's say one more. Then let's talk about this. What I just told you is the first big news. When I left the city at sunrise, I just heard the second big news. The demoness of Duke Ning's family, who could bring disaster to the country, finally met the King of Hell. Some of the people from Lingnan who had just moved up north were curious. Why do they call Miss Duke a demoness who brings disaster to the country? Could it be that she has done something outrageous? The mute girl's heart skipped a beat. She subconsciously looked nervously at Ning Shu, afraid that she would think of something when she heard this name. Her movements were so big that Pangui quickly grabbed her arm. The mute girl immediately came back to her senses and retracted her gaze. Fortunately, Ning Shu was listening with great interest and didn't notice her strange behavior. "You're not from the capital, right? No wonder. You haven't heard of the demoness of the Ning family. Let me tell you about it. This Ning family has a daughter. When she was 10, she was condemned to bring disaster to the 9 generations of her family. When she was 15, she married 3 husbands in succession. 2 died and 1 was injured. The Tan family, who had just been engaged, was ruined in just 2 days. The dignified Prime Minister Tan, who used to be second only to one and above everyone else, was forced to enter a temple to become a monk. TSK. Tell me how powerful this is. Right. The most outrageous thing is that she was clearly engaged to the young master of the Tan family, but she still went to provoke. Who did she provoke? The old man was filled with righteous indignation. The heir of Prince Nanping, Xiahou Qing. Chapter 468. The surrounding people widened their eyes. Wow. Is that true? The old man was so serious that he only lacked a piece of gavel in his hand. How can it be false? I saw it with my own eyes. Every day, she ran to the gate of Nanping Wang Fu. Xiahou Shizi ignored her at first, but she was shameless. Every day, she ran to the gate of the Wang Fu to recite love poems and sing songs, forcing Xiahou Shizi to open the gate. She threw herself at Xiahou Shizi. She even forced a kiss on Xiahou Shizi on the street. Xiahou Shizi's heart was as pure as water, but he was poisoned by her. Tell me, this kind of behavior is simply outrageous. The worst is yet to come. After taking Xiahou Shizi, she was still not satisfied. From Prince Ku to 6th Prince Xiao Yuni and 7th Prince Xiao Yunsen, they all had unspeakable relations with her. Even 8th Prince Xiao Yunjin, who just came of age, was tainted by that evil woman. I heard that if it wasn't for the Empress's slight punishment, even His Majesty was almost. Ari. If this isn't a demoness who brings disaster to the country, then what is she? An old man was filled with righteous indignation and immediately reached a consensus with his brother. There is actually such an unrestrained and unethical woman in this world. If we let her live a few more days in this world, our great you won't be far from being destroyed. That's right, that's why God couldn't stand it and took her away. It's said that her death was extremely tragic. It's really satisfying. Ha 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 ha. Everyone scolded Ning Shu. Hearing this, the mute girl was scared witless. If it wasn't for the heavy rain outside, she would have immediately taken her people to the carriage and run away. Fortunately, Ning Shu was focused on eating the snacks that Pan Gui had just passed to her. She was like a little squirrel that was seriously storing food and didn't have time to think. The mute girl was relieved again. Someone raised a question. Why did I hear that although her private life is chaotic, she is a rare expert in solving cases? She contributed to several earth-shaking cases before, especially the case of the envoy's sudden death. If she didn't turn the tide, we wouldn't have been able to avoid a dispute with Southern Yang. So, she actually has some redeeming qualities. TSK. You're too naive. All the women in the world relied on men to survive. For a woman, especially a beautiful woman, selling her looks was her greatest ability. Do you really believe that the honor she received was based on her own knowledge? Idiot. Ha ha ha. A long burst of laughter quickly erupted from the crowd. Ning Shu, who was peeling pine nuts, frowned. She suddenly felt that the delicacies in her hands were no longer fragrant. All the women in the world depend on men to survive. This kind of thinking is too narrow-minded and laughable. I thought that only those old fogies who thought highly of themselves and were stupid and ignorant would have such thoughts, but I did not expect that there would be so many people who would agree with them. It is truly laughable, lamentable, lamentable, and lamentable. I could not help but sigh. My great you is not far from decline. How distressing. The old man who had been leading the group to laugh immediately turned cold. He stood up and pointed at her. Which little girl is spouting nonsense? Come out if you have the guts. Ning Shu leisurely patted the pine nut shell off her hand and wiped her mouth with a handkerchief. She then slowly stood up and met his gaze. She chuckled and said, "It is this little girl. What advice does my dear friend have?" That person's triangular eyes scanned Ning Shu from head to toe, revealing a disdainful sneer. So it's a girl who's so ugly that she can't even show her face. What, did I say something wrong? Why don't you tell me? All the women in the world are women, wives, and mothers. There is a saying, follow the father at home, follow the husband when married, and follow the son when the husband dies. If you don't have a man, do you think you can survive in this world? The clothes you're wearing, the maidservants by your side, and the carriage parked at the door, which one of them was not given to you by your father? Even if you die of old age in the future, Your grave will be swept by your nephew. You actually have the guts to spout nonsense in front of me. Wait until you grow your manhood in your next life. Showing your face in public all day is a slut. You appear in the wilderness at such a young age, running into a group of men like us. You really are chaste and courteous. The men present could not help but burst into strange laughter. Ha 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 ha. The mute girl Pangui was so angry her face turned green. The mute girl could not help but put her hand on the soft whip at her waist. She wanted to go forward and whip these people's mouths. Ning Shu was not angry at all. She calmly patted the mute girl, indicating for her to calm down. Then, with her hands behind her back, she walked in front of that person, pacing back and forth. Chapter 469. The old man was scared by Ning Shu's stare and coldly reprimanded, "What are you looking at in front of me for? You're not allowed to wander around." Ning Shu paced back and forth in deep thought. She took a deep breath and clapped her hands. "I'm looking at your glabella. You're indeed worthy of being the disciple of White Crane Monastery's old immortal. You have quite a brilliant idea, Mph, at least you're tactful. I'm in a good mood today, so I won't bicker with you. Quickly retreat." Ning Shu stopped and smiled. "According to old brother's brilliant idea, I've thought about it again and also realized a similar principle. All the men in this world are sons, husbands, and fathers, aren't they? As sons, their mothers give them their lives. If they don't have a woman, they can't even be human. They can only fall into the path of animals or the path of plants and be trampled on by others. When Nuer created humans, I'm afraid she accidentally created a brain for some people. Alas, it's so pitiful. As a husband, his wife has to take care of his family. If he doesn't have a woman, his descendants can't pass on their legacy. No one cares about their well-being, no one cares about their clothing and food. They wander the world and suffer alone. In ancient times, there were Lihua and Wugo who assisted their husbands to inherit the empire. The emperor and empress complemented each other and achieved hegemony. In recent times, there was the founding emperor and empress who lived in seclusion for dozens of years. They helped each other in difficult times and finally achieved great things. Even the emperors of all ages didn't dare to look down on their wives, yet old brother dares to talk nonsense like this. How do the words "make a fool of yourself" are written? My daughter can be considered to have learned something new. Before the old man got angry, Ning Shu continued, "As a father, raising children is a natural duty. If you don't raise them, then you're not human. As a child, it's natural to know gratitude. But if as a father, everyone follows old brother's example and brags about their duty as a favor and uses it as a threat, presumably Tying won't be willing to save her father and Mulan won't disdain to join the army for her father. Tilde bridge of helplessness, if you can hear it now, don't think about reincarnating as old brother's children. That's really bad luck." Ning Shu's cherry lips parted slightly. Pa, 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 pa. Pearls big and small fell onto a jade plate without stopping for even a moment. That old man's complexion went from white to red, from red to green. She wasn't done yet, she gave him another heavy blow in the end. Today's news is that an envoy from southern Yang entered the capital and forced the princess to marry him. Otherwise, he would attack Rong City. The fifth princess, Xiao Changyu, is a righteous person. She is willing to sacrifice herself for the country. But after listening to Jun's words just now, I suddenly realized, why let His Majesty endure the pain of being separated from his flesh and blood, and send his beloved daughter to be loved? Why don't we just send you there directly? With your iron mouth, you can erase the thousands of years of hard work of all the women in the world. The Southern Yang army only has a few 100,000 soldiers. I'm sure it won't be a problem for you. Ning Shu's words quoted from the classics, spicy and humorous, amusing the audience until they were sprawled on all fours. The old man's face immediately darkened from top to bottom. He was so angry that he felt dizzy. He jumped up and angrily said, "You silly little girl, you must have eaten a bear's heart and a leopard's gall. You actually dare to slander me. Today, I'll teach you a good lesson on behalf of your father. He grabbed an iron rod from the side and swung it toward Ning Shu. The ruthlessness of his move was extraordinary. Ning Shu nimbly dodged. While dodging, she said, "You said just now that you're a traveling merchant who travels north and south. How come I don't think you're one? First, as a merchant, even if you leave the capital to avoid disaster, you'll instinctively prepare some local specialties and bring them to other places to sell. Every penny you earn is a penny. But I've been observing you for a long time. You don't have a single item on you. You're really the #1 merchant who treats money like dirt. Second, in order to do more business, most merchants are tactful and happy. Although they'll learn some martial arts for self-defense, most of them are reserved. But from your appearance, you don't look like a merchant at all. Instead, you're full of hostility and your eyes are filled with killing intent. It's really strange. I've also heard that there's a kind of bandits who don't openly hide in the deep mountains and old forests to rob people. Instead, they disguise themselves like cockroaches and rats and sneak into places where passers-by gather, such as broken-down temples and inns, to inquire about inside information. Once they've obtained the trust of the passers-by, they work together from the inside and the outside and kill all the passers-by in one fell swoop. Then, they take all the valuables for themselves. Most of these places are in the wilderness. Even if the passers-by are all killed, no one will know. Thus, there have been more than 10 such cases around the capital recently. I wonder if you're familiar with these people. Please say hello to them for me. Chapter 470. When Ning Shu mercilessly exposed his mask, the passers-by, who were originally happy and had nothing to do with them, suddenly changed their expressions. They all gasped and retreated in horror. Especially the old man who had just belittled women with the peddler. He was so scared that he almost fell over. He still looked down on women, but what if what this little girl said was true? His life was more important. The peddler quickly cleared a large area around him. His eyelids trembled and he immediately showed a fierce look. "How did you see through my identity?" Ning Shu looked at the thick calluses between his thumb and forefinger, as well as his eyes that had inadvertently looked at the gold and silver jewelry when he was telling the story. She was not prepared to tell him the truth, but deliberately revealed a sinister smile. She raised her eyebrows and said, "Because I am the Ning Shu you mentioned just now, the one who died tragically. I heard you miss me, so I climbed up from hell. Why, are you surprised?" Her lips were indeed smiling, but her eyes were as cold as ice. The peddler was shocked at first, but then he became more and more angry. "How dare you scare me? You want to die." He pressed the handle of the iron rod. With a clang, the iron rod split into two, revealing the sharp iron all that was 2 feet long. Once it pierced through, there was only one result: intestines would be pierced and belly would be smashed. He fiercely ground his molars and sneered, "Even if you know my identity, so what? My gang is hiding around this broken temple, waiting for my order to rush in and kill all of you. If you know what's good for you, hand over all your belongings immediately, and I will leave you a whole corpse. Ha 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 ha." Along with his unbridled and wild laughter, black shadows that looked like evil spirits suddenly scuttled out from the curtain of rain outside and surrounded the small ruined temple. They were like greedy and bloodthirsty hyenas that bared their fangs and flashed their bayonets, waiting to kill and eat meat. Suddenly, desperate cries broke out in the broken temple. The old coachman used to be a soldier. When he saw the situation, he immediately raised his arms and shouted, "Don't cry. We have 30 to 40 people here, and there are at most 20 shadows outside. We have twice as many people. As long as we resist stubbornly, we may not lose. All of you, stand up. Take out all the wooden sticks and heavy objects and fight with me." But after waiting for a long time, no one stood out. The crowd looked at each other. Someone said dejectedly, "So what if we have more people? They're bandits who kill without batting an eye. My hands haven't even been stained with chicken blood. If you resist, you might die even more miserably." A cowardly man immediately came forward from the back and knelt on the ground, kowtowing and begging for mercy. "All my belongings are here. I'll give them all to you." Please spare my life. I promise I won't tell anyone else what happened. Heroes, please let me go. Let me go. With the first betrayer, there was a second, a fifth, and a 10th. Very soon, the dilapidated temple was filled with people kneeling on the ground. The old man looked at them with a pained expression. Get up. You haven't even tried, but you've already broken your own spines. Where's your dignity? Where's your backbone? Get up. But still, no one stood up. The temple was filled with the sound of weeping. Ning Shu stopped the old man and shook her head. Don't try to persuade him. It's useless. Although cowardice and avoidance were shameful, these were the bad habits of human beings. Once the knees were bent, it was too difficult to stand up again. Look, 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 you're all kneeling in front of me like dogs. Enjoying the people's desperate cries, the peddler raised his head and laughed sinisterly. He glared and pointed his iron awl at Ning Shu. How about this? I'll give you a chance. Tie this girl up and kill her. Place her head in front of me and I'll spare your lives today. Go. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 471. Immediately, dozens of pairs of eyes flashed with cold light like the tip of a knife, hesitantly surrounding Ning Shu, causing her heart to turn cold. She silently looked at those strange, pitiful, selfish and ruthless faces and clenched her fists little by little. She looked at the peddler with disgust and gritted her teeth. You are an evil spirit. He sneered twice. So what if I am an evil spirit? Playing with people's hearts is the most interesting. Don't you want to be a heroine? Let's play a game and see if these people will choose your life or their own. If you win, I will let you go. In these years, I have played this game no less than 10 times and I have won every time. I have lost interest in playing. How about this? Let's end this quickly. I will count to 50. If you still can't cut off her head, I will send you to heaven. 1, 2, 3. A copper coin that fell on the ground could cause the beggars to fight and bleed, let alone life and death. In the silent temple, a 7 feet tall man kneeling in the corner wiped his tears and said, My wife just gave birth to a child and is waiting for me at home. I haven't seen the mother and son yet. Me too, me too. I received a message that my mother was seriously ill, so I rushed through the night and passed by here. I don't deserve to die. We have suffered for most of our lives and haven't enjoyed 2 days of happiness. To die here like this, we are wronged. Facing the surrounding snake-like eyes, the old coachman felt a chill from the back of his head all the way to his spine. No one wanted to die, they wanted to struggle at death's door to live, but could it be that their lives were built on the death of his young miss? With trembling hands, he angrily said, My young miss saw through this person's identity. If she wanted to escape, she only needed to quietly take us away. What does your life or death have to do with us? But she didn't, instead she took the risk to expose it in front of everyone, just to remind everyone to be careful and to protect your safety. But you actually repay kindness with enmity. Where is your conscience? Was it eaten by a dog? The coachman's words temporarily calmed the crowd. Everyone looked at each other and lowered their heads in shame. However, the vendor was still counting. He sneered at the group of people and deliberately sped up. 22, 23, 24. One after another, it was the countdown to one's life, constantly challenging one's humanity. A man stood up from the crowd. It was a father with a child. He pressed the child's head down and kowtowed a few times to Ning Shu. Miss, I'm sorry. My child is only 7 years old. I don't mind dying, but he can't. Since you want to save our lives, why don't you save us all the way? Back then, Buddha also sacrificed himself to feed the tiger to obtain the great fortune. All of us here will remember your kindness and burn incense and send you paper money every day in the future. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Soon, the temple was filled with all sorts of cries and howls. They all looked at Ning Shu in unison, feeling guilty and greedy. If you're willing to sacrifice yourself for so many of us, I'll definitely go to the temple and offer you an altar lamp. I'll beg the Buddha and the Jade Emperor to bless you so that you can ascend to immortality as soon as possible. Good people will be rewarded. You are alone, but there are dozens of us here. I beg you." Although they were kneeling on the ground and praying, their fists were clenched tightly. They couldn't help looking for sticks or ropes around them with the corners of their eyes. It seemed that if Ning Shu said no, they would rush over at any time and splatter her blood on the spot. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.